Chapter 115 Zhongguanyu. Chapter 115 Zhongguanyu. Chapter 115 Zhongguanyu. Not really, Lin Ming said with a faint smile. He continued, here, life is too comfortable and luxurious. The quiet and simple days of the seven profound martial house are much more suitable for cultivation. This, Brother Lin, is too assiduous. Sometimes proper rest is needed. A bowstring stretched too taut isn't necessarily a good thing. Some degree of relaxation is also good. Since Brother Lin has decided to go, then I will call the guards to protect Brother Lin on his way back. The Crown Prince quickly called his royal guard to keep Lin Ming safe as he returned to the martial house. When Lin Ming left, the 4 young maidservants were relieved, but they also felt a faint disappointment. Their entire manor of several hundred people had been busy at work for the past few days meticulously cleaning the entire manor, but Lin Ming had only taken a look and hadn't even sat down. However, this manor now belonged to Lin Ming. Regardless of whether he slept here or stayed here, they had to keep everything clean and spotless every day. What? Challenge me in 4th months. In a sumptuously decorated hall, on top of a soft silk mattress, an exceedingly handsome young man lazily reclined against a headrest. This young man's hands were greedily hugging an enchanting beauty of great assets. At the foot of the mattress, a young, beautiful maid was slowly massaging his legs, and on the other end, a charmingly pretty woman was plucking crystal grapes with her slender fingers, and gently placing them into the young man's mouth. This man was the 3rd place master of the 7 profound martial houses ranking stone, Zhongguanyu. Besides the core disciples of the 7 profound martial house, he was the only gifted genius with a 5th grade martial talent. Not only that, but Zhongguanyu was an outstanding talent who was raised by the Allied Trade Association. In the future, he had the possibility of becoming the president of the Allied Trade Association. The Allied Trade Association was a large organization that was heavily invested in the Sky Fortune Kingdom, and even in several nearby countries. It had existed for a long time. It was even older than the Sky Fortune dynasty. With such a great organization, its history and strength were profound and unthinkable. Zhongguanyu's martial talent was only inferior to Qin Xingxuan within the entirety of all the young martial artists of the Sky Fortune Kingdom. With the important position that he occupied, it could be said that he was a favored son of heaven. Beautiful women, wealth, power, all of these were easily within his reach. However, even with the vast resources of the Allied Trade Association and with his own gifted talent, he still hadn't produced any amazing results. On the 7 profound martial house ranking stone, he was only 3rd, below Ling Sen and Ta Ku. Ling Sen had his Ashura martial intent. His strength was formidable and disgustingly abnormal. Being below him was understandable. But Ta Ku was only a superior 4th grade talent. Although he did have inborn divine strength, his talent was inferior to Zhongguanyu, and the resources at his disposal were far inferior. It was unjustifiable for Zhongguanyu to be suppressed by Ta Ku. Ultimately, it was decided that Zhongguanyu's heart of martial arts was too weak, and he excessively wallowed in debauchery. When he had passed the dream trial, Zhongguanyu's results had been horrible. But even knowing this problem, the Allied Trade Association had no way to force Zhongguanyu into abstinence. This was because a martial artist had to follow their heart and soul. If they were forced to go against their nature, their heart would be suppressed, and their cultivation would be hindered. Facing this situation, the Allied Trade Association did have a backup plan. That was simply to let Zhongguanyu practice the 7 profound martial houses Acacia faction's cultivation methods. However, the Acacia faction's high-level cultivation method manuals were only passed down to core disciples. If Zhongguanyu wanted to study them, he could study the branch methods. At this point, his family's deep history demonstrated just how far their hands could reach. The Allied Trade Association relied on its wide-reaching network and nefarious methods to forcibly create an opportunity and persuade the 7 Profound Valleys Acacia faction to pass on a part of its core cultivation method manual so that Zhongguanyu could practice it. Zhongguanyu had already been practicing this cultivation method for half a year now, and his cultivation had already been greatly increased. The new and improved Zhongguanyu was like a fish in water. He had S*X every day, and his cultivation steadily grew. He led a dreamy life of revelry and carnal pleasures with unsurpassed comfort. Tonight, just as Zhong Guanyu had been planning to enjoy the company of 2 pretty concubines, he received news from the 7 profound martial house that Lin Ming would challenge him within 4 months. This caused his libido to be reduced, and the flames of anger in his heart to rise. This 7 profound martial house, it was as if they were taking him as some sort of sharpening stone. Yes, Elder Wang visited the Crown Prince's palace to directly pass on the 7 profound decree to Lin Ming, and inform him of the 7 profound martial test. The requirements of the test are that he achieve the peak-altering muscle stage when 16 years old, or to reach the bone-forging stage when he is 18 years old. In addition, if he can enter the top 10 rankings of the 10,000 killing array within 3 months, defeat you in 4 months, defeat Ta Ku within 5 months, or defeat Ling Sen within 6 months, then he will have an extra reward. And these are truly rich rewards. The one who spoke was a man over 20 years old. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, he was one of the 7 core disciples of the 7 profound marital house. His name was Ju Yu. Ju Yu came from a martial arts cultivation family, and he also practiced the cultivation methods of the Acacia faction. He and Ju Yu had a good relationship with each other due to this. Humph. Since they want to use me as a sharpening tool, fine, I will break this sword. This Lin Ming has become too arrogant these days. A mere piddling 3rd-grade talent little boy dares to claim without any justifications that he is the genius of a century in the 7 profound martial house. These years, although Zhong Guanyu's strength was inferior to Ling Sen and Ta Ku's, he still had the esteemed reputation of being the 2nd most talented individual in the younger generation of the Sky Fortune Kingdom. And that 1st place spot belonged to Qin Xingxuan. However, Qin Xingxuan was just a woman, and because of that, he did not envy her at all. Zhong Guanyu never envied women, because as long as he conquered a woman, then their own talent became his. And if he could not conquer them, then that was unimportant as long as that woman was not conquered by other men. If it was so, then Zhong Guanyu could bear it. But this Lin Ming was different. In these past days Lin Ming had stolen the spotlight from him. All the attention of the major powers of Sky Fortune City and the common martial artists was on him. Who would remember someone like Zhong Guanyu? What did Zhong Guanyu count for? Although he was 3rd on the ranking stone, and had a talent above almost everyone else, what the people cared about most were not talents, but results. In the streets and alleys of Sky Fortune City, as long as a person mentioned the younger generation of the 7 profound martial house, it would all be about the name Lin Ming. Just hearing this name made Zhong Guanyu feel unhappy. And now, even more directly for Lin Ming's test, the 7 profound martial house had listed out such ridiculous conditions. They had actually planned on using him as a stepping stone for Lin Ming to rise up further as a mythic genius. This aroused Zhong Guanyu's wrath. It was always him that stepped on others. When was it others' turn to step on him? Well done. What a 7 profound martial house master. Since you dare to use me as a human stepping stone, then I will step on that person you have so kindly chosen and trample him underneath my feet mercilessly. This is just right. I have already cultivated the divine Acacia power to large success of the 1st layer. I'll have you look at the disparity between a 3rd-grade talent and a 5th-grade talent. Zhong Guanyu's face flashed with a hideous look. He gripped the breasts of the charming woman in one hand, and pulled the woman who was feeding grapes towards him. The women gave a surprised shout and the 3 of them tumbled together onto the bed. The curtains closed, and Zhong Guanyu smiled evilly as he started to rip off the clothes of the 2 concubines. Since his heart was burning with anger, he naturally had to vent it somewhere. Zhong Guanyu's method of venting was very direct, and that was to vent it on a woman's body. Listening to the tender and lewd sounds of the women in bed, Ju Yu only shook his head, turned around, and left. He had known Zhong Guanyu for a long time, and had some understanding of Zhong Guanyu's level of maturity. Zhong Guanyu would never resign himself to willingly be some other man's stepping stone. But now, since the 7 profound martial house has pushed Zhong Guanyu into opposition with Lin Ming, then Zhong Guanyu would naturally take some measures to deal with Lin Ming. Zhong Guanyu was a person with a very arrogant heart and an even stronger possessive nature. He was the kind that wished to possess all the beauty and fine things of the world. He would not admit defeat just because of the unlimited potential of Lin Ming's future achievement. Although Zhong Guanyu was a lustful playboy, lascivious, and extremely arrogant, he still grew up around an abundance of gifted individuals. He was raised up in the sophisticated and complex environment of the Allied Trade Association, and was still able to rise to the top. The main reason for this was Zhong Guanyu's top-tier talent, but regarding intelligence, he had never been a fool. Zhu Yu knew better than anyone that if Zhong Guanyu despised anyone, then that person would surely die a miserable death. Zhong Guanyu was scary. In this world, there were two types of martial artists that were dangerous to provoke, the crazy and the mad. The first was a martial crazy, like Ling Sen, whose individual strength was terrifying. But the latter was a mad lunatic like Zhong Guanyu, whose natural disposition was an insane paranoia, and would easily take one's life. The strong fear the unreasonable fear the suicidal, and the suicidal fear the crazy ones. Zhong Guanyu was a crazy one. If someone stabbed him with a knife, he would not dodge or evade, but take the pain from the blade and then rip out their throat. Dealing with such a psycho, the average man simply wouldn't dare to fight with him. Zhong Guanyu might confront Lin Ming before 4 months pass, but I don't know what means he'll use to do so. Zhu Yu's face showed a trace of an interested smile as he pondered this. Lin Ming wanted to be a core disciple, but it wasn't so easy. First, he had to overcome the hurdle known as Zhong Guanyu. By the time Lin Ming returned to his room at the Seven Profound Martial House, it was already late at night. He took out the spatial ring and carefully looked at it. He had already deposited some gold and true essence stones inside. Although the inner space of the spatial ring was unstable, as long as the ring was not destroyed, it wouldn't suddenly collapse. A martial artist would be able to sense when the lifespan of a spatial ring was coming to end, so there would never be sudden situations where everything in the ring would disappear. Lin Ming had already accrued more than 200 true essence stones. He had true essence stones gifted from the Crown Prince, true essence stones gifted from Wang Gan, and also true essence stones that he received as a reward for entering the heavenly abode. There were also nobles who also wanted to gift true essence stones to Lin Ming, but he had rejected them. If Lin Ming received their gifts, then he would owe them a favor, and he didn't want to tangle with any of this in the future. The true essence stones he had now were already more than enough to use. He also had an abundant amount of time at the 7 major killing arrays. However, if Lin Ming wanted to surpass Zhong Guanyu in 4 months, that would be very difficult. He had thought of a new way, and what Lin Ming had thought of was the body inscription symbol. Of the inscription symbols from the realm of the gods, there were 4 kinds. These were object inscriptions, medicinal inscriptions, body inscriptions, and soul inscriptions. Of these 4, each was more difficult to get started on than the last. As for the soul inscription symbols, Lin Ming was not clear on them. By now Lin Ming had learned the preliminary inscription symbols of object inscription and medicinal inscription. The plan for body inscription symbols needed a higher reserve of true essence. In the past, Lin Ming's true essence was insufficient. But now that he had reached the 2nd level of the true primal chaos formula and his cultivation was at the large success of viscera training, he finally had some confidence to be able to draw up this kind of body inscription symbol. 1. Formerly referred to as the Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 116 Maddening Materials. Chapter 116 Maddening Materials. Chapter 116 Maddening Materials. Body inscription was a type of inscription drawn onto the body. It was able to increase a martial artist's cultivation speed or enhance their battle prowess. As with objection inscription symbols, there was a limit to how many could be placed. The amount differed depending on the grade of the body inscription symbol as well as the physical condition of the martial artist. 4 body inscription symbols, the most one could draw were about 4 or 5. With his match against Zhong Guanyu approaching in 4 months, he had to draw up a body inscription symbol within a month in order to display its greatest effects, otherwise the quality of the effect would be lessened, or it might even be a complete waste of time. However, to draw up a body inscription symbol in a month was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Although Lin Ming had the memories of the soul fragment, in order to successfully create one, it would still take a long time and also use up a massive amount of rare and precious materials in order to practice. Practicing it was simple. What was difficult was finding a way to collect all of the incomparably rare and precious materials that were needed for the body inscription symbol. The degree to which these materials were rare and precious caused Lin Ming to shudder in fear. In the elder's memory, of the simplest body inscriptions, there were two. One was the essence-gathering symbol which could increase the speed of cultivation, and the other was the strife seal which could increase a martial artist's combat prowess. However, even if it were these two simplest body inscription symbols, the list of materials that needed to be used would make anyone go nut. Just the 5th level vicious beast blood, a single tael of this precious fluid would cost 30,000 gold taels. Lin Ming needed to buy 2 taels, which would mean 60,000 gold taels. And not only that, but it simply wasn't something that could be bought by just anyone. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, there was no one who was able to match up against a 5th level vicious beast. For a 5th level vicious beast, perhaps only a peak Hutian master would be barely able to deal with it. These kinds of martial artists usually came from a large sect or an aristocratic martial cultivation family. The blood of a 5th level vicious beast would only flow out from a large sect and then into the smaller countries. To these small countries, its price would be frighteningly astronomical. Then there was star obsidian. This material came from a meteorite that fell from the sky. The high temperature in the atmosphere would condense. This iron essence could only be naturally formed by the power of the heavens and earth, and beyond that, not every meteorite would have star obsidian. Only those meteorites that were above several thousand jins would possibly be able to produce 1 or 2 jins of star obsidian. The lowest market price of a single jin of obsidian was 150,000 gold taels, and it was extremely difficult to find. Fortunately, Lin Ming only needed 2 taels. Lin Ming estimated that if everything was bought at the lowest market price, and he bought these materials whenever he could find them, then the total of these materials would need at least 300,000 taels. This was simply a dream within a dream. Of the materials he needed, many were like the 5th level vicious beast blood and star obsidian. They just didn't have a market price. So that meant that more gold would have to be spent. The amount he would need might even go up to 500,000, or even 700,000 wouldn't be strain. And even if he managed to somehow obtain 600,000 or 700,000 taels of gold, he would be incredibly lucky to obtain these materials in a couple of years. If his luck was garbage, then he might not be able to find these materials even if he looked for 10 years. On the list of materials, the most basic ones would be considered precious valuables within Sky Fortune City's Inscription Association, and one also needed points from the Inscription Association in order to buy anything. The last time Lin Ming went there, he had already used up most of his points, and didn't have many left. Without points, these so-called basic materials would not be sold at any price. These would be the treasures of the Inscription Association. Looking at the list gave Lin Ming a throbbing headache. It was simply impossible for him to find all of these. He could only rely on the Crown Prince. This was one of the benefits of joining a major power. The Crown Prince's subordinates were numerous, and they had wide channels and networks they could work through. They could do him a great favor in helping him. Yet even if the Crown Prince made every effort, he would be limited in obtaining the materials. Thinking of this, Lin Ming shook his head and ruefully smiled. I joined the Crown Prince as one of his subordinates, and still haven't done a single thing, yet I actually want to make a sudden demand to find such a large amount of materials. And these precious and rare materials can't even be found in the city. Even if they were the relatively basic materials that I need, the Crown Prince would not be able to purchase them easily. Lin Ming knew that the Crown Prince was not wealthy. Even though the Crown Prince's palace looked opulent and grand, the palace had to hire several hundred people and pay them for their work. There were also several other expenses. In addition to the banquet, the Crown Prince gave gifts, rewards, and other such expenditures in order to win over others and raise his own influence. The annual amount of money that he spent was probably around 200,000 to 300,000 gold taels. For instance, when the Crown Prince had given Lin Ming a gift of more than 100 pure true essence stones, the cost of that had been several tens of thousands of gold taels. The manor that was situated near Sky Fortune City along with 100 acres of fertile farmland, servants, maids, and so forth would cost at least 100,000 gold taels. In addition, there was also the purple gold flexible armor, Added up altogether, it must have been more than 300,000 gold taels. Because the large expenditures, the economic situation of the crown prince might even be inferior to those famous inscription masters that had been working a long time. For example, Mui, Wang Xuanji, and those kinds of people, they had a high income, and their spending was low. After amassing money for many years, they were overflowing with riches. The crown prince used a very large amount of money. Depending on just his salary from the government, this would be utterly inadequate. The crown prince's income mostly came from his estate, farms, and also stores. The estate and paddies were things like the manor that had been bestowed upon Lin Ming. But as for shops, Lin Ming actually knew that the crown prince didn't have many. This was because the biggest and busiest shops of Sky Fortune City were firmly grasped in the hands of the Allied Trade Association. Compared to the 10th prince who constantly campaigned in all directions and plundered countless lands, the crown prince was very poor. Because he was poor, he could not win over others, and thus the crown prince's influence was suppressed by the 10th prince. The cost of all the gifts that the crown prince gifted me should total to around 300,000 gold taels. For the crown prince to suddenly hand so much over to me, he probably doesn't have much money on hand at the moment. I just received so many gifts, yet now I also want materials, it just isn't too appropriate. However, I have to ask for these materials, otherwise I will never be able to collect them on my own. Originally, finding the materials for the medicinal inscription symbol already took a very big effort on my part, and this body inscription symbol's materials are much more precious. I just don't have any way left but to ask the crown prince to help me find them. As for the money, I will find a solution, but first I should return the manor to the crown prince. With the two body inscription symbols, the essence gathering symbol and the strife seal, in addition to my ethereal martial intent, flow like silk ability, and the chaotic virtues combat meridians, I will have the confidence to face Zhong Guanyu 4 months from now. But I'm not sure if I can reach Ling Sen in 6 months. This Ling Sen, the stronger I am, the more I can sense just how terrifying he actually is. But provided that the crown prince can help me find the materials I need for the inscription symbol, there are certain materials I listed that might only be found in a sect. With just the crown prince's connections, how many would I be able to find? Inscription Association, Inscription Hall. Lin Ming had just stepped into the Inscription Association and was immediately discovered by the young reception lady who had received him last time. The young lady's eyes lit up, and she immediately put down the task she had been working on. She quickly walked over to Lin Ming, her breath somewhat rapid. These days, there were many people in Sky Fortune City that knew the name Lin Ming. But although they were able to recognize Lin Ming's name, and they didn't know what he looked like. However, this young reception lady had once been responsible for Lin Ming's inscription master examination and had his information. The Inscription Association of course knew that the dazzlingly bright star of Sky Fortune City and the #1 genius of the 7 profound martial house was exactly the young man who had participated in the inscription master examination. This was an amazing character, Mr. Lin. The young receptionist lady greeted with a sweet smile. She bent her small waist in a courtesy bow towards Lin Ming. Her beautiful figure combined with the secretary clothing had a flavorful appeal. "Oh, it's you. I'd like to speak to the association president," Lin Ming said. He recognized this young reception lady. "Very well. Please follow me." The receptionist lady felt her palpitating heartbeat began to race. She was incomparably excited that Lin Ming had remembered her. "Sorry for troubling you. It is my honor to serve Mr. Lin." The young receptionist lady went straight to the inscription room. At this time every day, the association president would be at the inscription room. This was the time that he would teach his granddaughter. For Wang Xuanji, no matter how much time he spent on his martial arts cultivation or inscription technique, it would be difficult for him to have a breakthrough. Because of this, he had invested the majority of his efforts into his granddaughter. The young receptionist lady opened the door to the inscription hall. This was the second time Lin Ming had been here. The first time was when he had taken his examination here. At this moment, Wang Xuanji was sitting on a green jade platform. He was directing the fingers of a young girl at his side. This young girl was wearing the white robes of an inscription master. Her appearance was delicate, like fine, white dust. She was Wang Xuanji's granddaughter, Wang Yuhan. After Wang Xuanji noticed some people had arrived, he turned his head to look and was shocked. Mr. Lin. President Wang. Lin Ming smiled and bowed in deference. Oh. Mr. Lin is an infrequent visitor. It's been a long time since you last came. I did not think that Mr. Lin would not only be talented in inscription techniques, but also talented in martial art. To be only 15 years old and be able to defeat the 32nd ranked disciple of the 7 profound martial house, your future is truly limitless. President Wang praises me too much. Lin Ming was not surprised that the Inscription Association was already aware of his situation. Wang Yuhan also stopped her inscription technique that she was working on. She had a complicated look as she stared at Lin Ming. She was already extremely talented, with a 4th-grade martial talent and a 5th-grade soul talent. With this talent, her qualifications already surpassed that of Bai Jingyun and Murongzi. In the aristocratic circles, those young juniors that wanted to marry Wang Yuhan were no less than those ardent fans of Bai Jingyun and Murongzi. But compared with this young man in her eyes, she simply felt too ashamed to even step out in public. The difference between her and Lin Ming's inscription technique was already miles apart. It was simply comparing the heavens to the earth. She didn't even want to think about the difference in their battle prowess. Wang Yuhan had devoted most of her energy into practicing inscription techniques, but in the martial arts aspect, she also only paid attention to cultivating. This was because inscription techniques required a deep amount of true essence, and therefore one had to have a high enough cultivation. As for fighting skills, Wang Yuhan knew nothing of those from the start. Let alone those monstrous geniuses of the 7 profound martial house, she would even lose to someone at the same cultivation level as her. How the hell did this fellow practice? She had been practicing inscription techniques since she was 8 years old, and in her life she had always prioritized her cultivation and specialized in inscription techniques. Even if it was the monstrous talent Qin Xingxuan, she could compare with her in terms of inscription techniques. And recently she had progressed very fast, perhaps she might have even surpassed Qin Xingxuan. But in contrast to this Lin Ming, Wang Yuhan was completely at a loss for words. Even if he started practicing inscription techniques from his mother's womb, why would his level of skill be so bizarrely abnormal? She was still working hard at training the basics of finger movements, but he had already been able to use the bright Buddha plucks the lotus. Mr. Lin comes today, is there matter you need to discuss? As Wang Xuanji asked this, Lin Ming did feel somewhat embarrassed. For better or worse, he was a registered inscription master of the Inscription Association. However, after registering and obtaining some materials, he hadn't returned. And now that he finally came back, it was also for materials to use for inscription symbols. Chapter 117, Guest Inscription Master. Chapter 117, Guest Inscription Master. Lin Ming said, President Wang, I came this time because there are 2 matters that I wanted to inquire about. The first is that I would like to purchase some materials, and the second is that I would like to register as a guest inscription master and provide services to customers while gaining points. There were 3 types of inscription masters that could work at the Inscription Association. They were subordinate inscription masters, registered inscription masters, and guest inscription masters. A guest inscription master only had to hang his name up on a public board. However, the first 2 had to complete some tasks for the Inscription Association, such as solving some difficult problems for their colleagues, or creating some sort of special inscription symbol for their customers, and other such tasks before they could obtain points. Now that Lin Ming needed to draw up a body inscription symbol, he was pushing the envelope in terms of his cultivation and skill in the aspects of inscription techniques. He needed to set aside a certain amount of special time in order to practice and improve his inscription technique. However, if he wanted to practice this sort of high-quality inscription technique, it required a substantial amount of money. Especially since he needed to do so with many precious materials, and even if he was able to buy these materials, he wouldn't be able to find them in such a short amount of time. In order to save money in the past, Lin Ming hadn't used materials to practice and had instead only stimulated his true essence to visualize the drawing process. But such a method had a very low efficiency, and Lin Ming wasn't able to afford the time that he needed in order to do so. Then he had remembered that he could come to the Inscription Association as a visiting inscription master, and be able to solve many different inscription-related problems. This was the best method of cultivating his inscription technique, and the best part was that the precious materials would be provided by the customer. Doing this, Lin Ming no longer had to worry about economizing or saving his time. Every day he would be able to encounter different precious materials and different problems. The materials needed would also be provided for free. After successfully drawing up or fixing whatever problem was at hand, he would also be awarded points. What way could possibly be more suitable for practice? However, not everyone would dare to practice in such a manner, because there had to be at least a 90% guaranteed success rate. Lin Ming decided on this method of practice, and also had a general idea of how to acquire the materials he needed. He also didn't plan on concealing his status as an inscription master any longer. At first, Lin Ming did not have strength or status, but yet he was still able to draw up rare and powerful inscription symbols that were worth 2,000 or 3,000 gold taels. To someone with power, meeting such a weak person was like seeing a chicken that was able to lay golden eggs. Some people might have tried to capture him for their own benefit, and lock him in a dungeon where he would be forced to create inscription symbols all day. That was why Lin Ming had hidden his status as an inscription master at first. But now, Lin Ming was a famous character in Sky Fortune City who had a great deal of influence. With the dual protection of the 7 profound martial house and the crown prince, not even the 10th prince dared to publicly move against him. Since Lin Ming now had such a preeminent status, he no longer worried about needing to conceal his identity as an inscription master. Guest inscription master? Wang Xuanji asked, slightly stunned. Normally only a great inscription master would ask to occupy such a lofty post. This was because if there was a problem, such as if they failed to draw up the inscription symbol, the Inscription Association had to compensate the customer for their precious materials or treasure. Without a deep background, no one would dare to do this job. To become a guest inscription master, they had to undergo the strict inspection of the Inscription Association. Those who could pass the inspection were only top-class characters among inscriptionists. Lin Ming did have exceptional talent and strength in inscription techniques, but that was only in comparison to his contemporaries. Last time, he had drawn up an inscription symbol with a true essence amplification rate of 32%. Among his peers, this result was truly monstrous, but to become a guest inscription master, it was still lacking. The crux of the issue was that Lin Ming was simply too young. A guest inscription master had to face many different kinds of problems and questions, some of which were quite difficult. It was a job that required a great depth of experience. However, experience was something that was accumulated over the years. If Lin Ming repeatedly failed, not only would that damage the reputation of the Inscription Association, but the amount of materials and treasure that the Inscription Association would have to compensate would be enough to give them a headache. Mr. Lin, the problems that the Inscription Association generally needs to solve are not so simple. Because the materials are often very rare and difficult to obtain, the guest inscription master must be able to guarantee at least an 80% success rate. They must be assured that they can solve these complex problems with a high success rate. Even in the entire Inscription Association, there are very few individuals who are competent enough for this position. Wang Xuanji tactfully reminded Lin Ming. He wanted to persuade him without any difficulties. With Lin Ming's present reputation, the Inscription Association had to flatter him as much as they could. Lin Ming smiled and said, "President Wang doesn't need to worry. I suppose, if I fail 3 times in a row, then I will offer to quit myself. As for the loss of materials and treasure, I will also take responsibility for compensating them." This, Wang Xuanji frowned. He would be able to stand the loss of reputation from failing 3 times, but the point was, Lin Ming was still a child. If they let a young boy draw up an inscription symbol and it failed, how would they explain this to the customer? But considering Lin Ming's present status, Wang Xuanji didn't directly decline him. He thought about it for a moment, and then nodded his head in agreement. 3 times. By now, Wang Yuhan opened her mouth and suddenly said, "Mr. Lin, may I ask if you have found the right assistant?" Millimeter? Assistant. An inscription master would normally have 1 or 2 assistants. This was because there were many materials that could not be immediately used after they were purchased. They needed to be processed in certain ways. For instance, for some rare and precious plants, the juice had to be extracted, or some ores had to be grinded into fine powder, or the active ingredient had to be extracted from certain solvents. All of this would normally be done by an assistant. In the past, Lin Ming had done all of these things by himself. The position of an assistant was not a simple or easy job. There were many precious and expensive materials. The slightest mistake meant that they would have to be discarded. This was why only inscription apprentices would usually take up this task. Lin Ming truthfully said, "I have no assistant." Wang Yuhan looked to her grandfather, bit her lips, and asked, "Do you mind if I be your assistant?" The young women of the Sky Fortune Kingdom were traditionally reserved and polite. If a girl offered herself up as a volunteer to a young boy as an assistant, there might be some suspicions and it could be easily misunderstood. Lin Ming's current status was especially sensitive these days. No one knew how many young girls of Sky Fortune City wanted to marry him. The number could only be called countless. As such, Wang Yuhan had to muster up a lot of courage in order to ask this question. However, she remembered that Lin Ming's drawing techniques when he drew up the symbols and lines were clearly different than those of Sky Fortune Kingdom. Wang Yuhan also dropped her girl's modesty. She wanted to experience the schools of inscription techniques outside of the Sky Fortune Kingdom, and this was the best opportunity. Lin Ming hesitated. With an assistant, he would be able to save a lot of time. With Wang Yuhan's ability, she would do perfectly well in handling materials. Thinking this, Lin Ming nodded and said, "Then I will be relying on Miss Wang. I don't know if Miss Wang has had lunch yet. If Miss Wang had already eaten, then we may begin as soon as possible." Wang Yuhan's eye twitched. This Lin Ming was quite resolute and vigorous. He actually wanted to begin immediately. Millimeter. I've already eaten. Good. Lin Ming, Wang Yuhan, Wang Xuanji, and the young reception lady all went to the inscription hall. It was lunch break for the guest inscription masters, and not many people were in the hall. But there were still several customers waiting, so that when the lunch break ended, they might be the first one to have their problems solved. According to the rules of the Inscription Association, a customer only had to provide their own materials and treasure, clearly state their problem, and then they could return at a later time. But most customers would rather wait here and personally watch as the guest inscription master solved their problem. This was because whether it was a precious materials or a treasure, they were often very valuable, so they worried over the outcome. Many people here had already waited a long time. As they saw the Inscription Association's president, Wang Xuanji, enter the hall, their spirits immediately lifted. Was President Wang planning on personally taking action today? It had to be known that Wang Xuanji rarely personally stepped out these days. If someone could force him to take action, this character's had to be at least a duke or a prince, or a cultivator at the peak Hutian stage. When he utilized his inscription technique, with the end product being made by Wang Xuanji's own hands, the effect would usually be far better than a normal inscription master. If Wang Xuanji was willing to personally take up the task, this would be their great fortune. Several people looked at Wang Xuanji with shining eyes, their faces filled with a fervent eagerness. Seeing Wang Xuanji walking towards them, they hurried to welcome him. A martial artist in his 40s had already stepped up, and asked, "President Wang, I didn't expect to be able to meet you. Would you be able to take a look at this armor?" The martial artist said as he held up an ancient-looking, plain black war armor. This war armor looked to be made from the highest quality steel. After many years, there were only minor scratches on the surface of the armor, in particular the chest area. There was a half-meter line that ran up the edge of a diamond-shaped pattern. Because of this scratch, the diamond pattern was damaged. This diamond pattern was the signifying mark left behind after placing on an inscription symbol. Because this war armor was damaged, that inscription symbol mark was ruined. If the inscription symbol mark was ruined, then the effects of the original inscription symbol would deteriorate, or even become completely invalid. It was possible to damage treasures, especially those treasures that were in the armor class. Because they accumulated damage over time, in addition to the attacks from a top-level master, then it might even break. This martial artist hoped that the Inscription Association was able to repair this inscription symbol. But, to repair an inscription symbol that was already placed on a treasure was a very difficult task. This diamond rune was an inscription symbol named the Superhuman Strength symbol. It was a very complex inscription symbol. To repair it would not be easy. Even Wang Xuanji felt that this job was very problematic. However, this kind of work was very appropriate for Lin Ming. Because the original inscription symbol had already shattered, even if Lin Ming failed, it couldn't get any worse than it already was. And the armor would not be broken. At most, it would be a loss of materials. If the materials were lost, then the Inscription Association would be able to compensate the exact same materials. But if the treasure was broken, then there was no means to refund the customer with the same armor. Wang Xuanji glanced at Lin Ming with a faint smile. He was sure that Lin Ming would not be able to repair the superhuman strength symbol. This was because Lin Ming's school of inscription technique did not belong that of the Sky Fortune Kingdoms. This superhuman strength symbol was one of the numerous and complex symbols that were produced from Sky Fortune Kingdom's school of inscription techniques. If one did not understand its composition or drawing plan, then it would be impossible to know where to begin. If Lin Ming was a guest inscription master, he would also encounter similar issues down the line. If he couldn't solve something like this, it was better if he quit early. Therefore, even though Wang Xuanji knew the answer, he still sent a true essence sound transmission and asked, "How about it? Does Mr. Lin have a plan?" At this point, Lin Ming had sent his soul force into the suit of war armor and was feeling the internal structure of the inscription symbol. It was very difficult to detect the structure of an inscription symbol with soul force. If one didn't understand the structure of an inscription symbol, it was impossible to know where to begin. Lin Ming slight frowned, and eventually came to a conclusion. This diamond-shaped inscription symbol should be some kind of inscription symbol with an effect of increasing the rate at which true essence was gathered. As for its internal structure, Lin Ming didn't know anything about it. After all, there were many differences in the inscription technique system between the Sky Fortune Kingdom and the realm of the gods. Chapter 118, Repairing the Superhuman Strength Symbol. Chapter 118, Repairing the Superhuman Strength Symbol. Lin Ming's level of inscription technique was fierce, but he was not omnipotent. Since he had never seen this inscription symbol before, it was impossible for him to fix this. However, after pondering it for a moment, he sent a true essence sound transmission to Wang Xuanji. "President, I'll give it a try." Since he had achieved the third stage of body transformation and his control of true essence had become stronger, Lin Ming taught himself how to use true essence to send a sound transmission. Millimeter? Wang Xuanji was surprised. Had Lin Ming seen the superhuman strength symbol before? Even if he had, this superhuman strength symbol was an unusually complex one that was developed through Sky Fortune Kingdom's school of inscription techniques. Even a great inscription master might not be able to draw it. Lin Ming was only 15 years old, how could he be familiar with its method of creation? Lin Ming was indeed excessively talented, but Wang Xuanji still believed that there was no way that Lin Ming would be able to fix this superhuman strength symbol. This is quite interesting. I'd like to see if Lin Ming is capable of repairing this superhuman strength symbol. Wang Xuanji revealed a smile as he thought this, and then said, "Good, then give it a try." Lin Ming nodded, and that in the inscription platform. As the middle-aged man saw Lin Ming sit down, he was dumbfounded. Scared, he quickly said, "President Wang, this is..." The man couldn't understand, and he didn't know Li Ming. He only thought of him as an apprentice of the Inscription Association. Did Wang Xuanji really intend on letting such a young apprentice repair his armor? Was this not a joke? Wang Xuanji said, "It's all right, it's only letting him try. If it doesn't work, then I will personally help you with your problem." But the middle-aged man painfully looked at those materials that he had carefully prepared. It really wrenched his heart. In accordance to the rules of the Inscription Association, if the customer came to the Inscription Association requesting a service, they had to supply materials as a reward, and they also had to supply the materials required for the request. If they didn't have the materials ready, then they could be provided by the Inscription Association as long as the customer had other materials that were similar in value. Although he was a martial artist at the peak pulse condensation period, to put out so many precious and rare materials so suddenly really caused his heart to feel like it was being torn in half. These materials cost 7,000 to 8,000 taels of gold. The middle-aged martial artist had used more than a year of time before he was able to collect all of the materials he needed. This armor was a medium-grade human steppe treasure that was his family heirloom. It was far too precious for him, otherwise he would not have put up so much gold and so many materials. Wang Xuanji laughed and said, "It doesn't matter. These materials that you brought, if he fails, then I assure you your armor will still be repaired." All right. With Wang Xuanji's guarantee, the middle-aged man decided to let that little kid Lin Ming do as he wanted. He only hoped that what he did wasn't so bad that not even Wang Xuanji could fix it. But just where the hell had this little kid come from, that Wang Xuanji would let him fool around like this? Of Sky Fortune City's inscription apprentices, besides Wang Yuhan and Qin Xingxuan, he hadn't heard of anyone else. With such a complex superhuman strength symbol, what results could he have from just fiddling around with it? The middle-aged martial artist's heart was full of puzzlement. Lin Ming took the armor in his hand and immersed his soul force into the superhuman strength symbol. With the unsurpassed overbearing soul tactic soul law formula, he was able to condense his soul force into the thinnest string and send it into the inscription symbol, constantly perceiving the structure of the superhuman strength symbol. He carefully wrote down every line and symbol structure that he could sense. At this time, because of the high degree of soul force that he was condensing, Lin Ming's face was filled with unprecedented focus. When he had been in the kitchen of the Great Clarity Pavilion, he also had this expression. Regardless of whether it was the vulgar and barbaric strength that he needed for deboning, or the delicate soul force control he needed to create the countless fine and complex lines and runes of inscription symbols, their essence was all the same in Lin Ming's hands. One kind was used to ascertain the skeletal structure and tendons of a beast, and the other was used to draw the foundation symbols and foundation lines of inscription symbols. What he was doing was using these principles he had learned to crack open the complex nature of symbol structure. Wang Yuhan stood behind Lin Ming, quietly gazing at his profile. She could clearly feel Lin Ming's focused and sharp eyes. This look, whether intentional or not, revealed his intense spirit and dedication. It caused this youth to have an imposing aura that didn't seem to match his young age. Wang Yuhan couldn't help but acknowledge that this sort of aura was very fascinating and swoonsome. Some puppy love girls would be easily attracted to this aura, and they would sink into it. Could he really repair this superhuman strength symbol? Wang Yuhan couldn't believe that. Even though Lin Ming had created a number of miracles over and over again, this one was just far too difficult, and bordered on the impossible. Lin Ming was not from the school of Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription techniques, and he was only 15 years old. At such a young age, it was just unthinkable that he could have achieved the pinnacle of two different schools of inscription techniques. Lin Ming kept studying the inscription symbol for a quarter of an hour of time. During this quarter hour he had not budged a single inch. The middle-aged man seemed to become increasingly impatient. At this moment, Lin Ming opened his mouth and suddenly said, "President Wang, I want to ask you, if you were to repair this inscription symbol, how much of its effects could you restore?" Wang Xuanji hesitated, then smiled and stroked his beard. This kid, did he want to compare with him? Wang Xuanji said, "If this old man repairs the superhuman strength symbol, I can probably restore at least 80% of its original effects." The superhuman strength symbol is a kind of supplementary inscription symbol. Once it is engraved on the armor, although it cannot directly increase the defensive power, it can increase the user's true essence gathering speed. The effect of this superhuman strength symbol was probably originally around 36 to 37%. If I repair it, the final effect should probably be around 30 to 31%. The effectiveness of a repaired inscription symbol could not match its effect when it had first been drawn. Even if it was Wang Xuanji who personally repaired it, the truth of this would not chance. "Oh, I understand. Then no matter what means I use, as long as the final rate of the armor's true essence gathering speed increases by at least 30%, then I have succeeded." Ho! This kid sure had enough self-confidence. Wang Xuanji watched Lin Ming with great interest. He dared say that to have the final effect be at least 30%, there weren't many who could accomplish this in the entirety of the Sky Fortune Kingdom, or even several of the surrounding countries. What was this kid planning on doing? He laughed and said, if the guest inscription master could restore 28%, then that would be good. If you can restore the effect to at least 28%, then you would be considered qualified. Lin Ming nodded. He touched a ring on his ring finger, and the following scene left everyone shocked and dumbfounded. They saw Lin Ming leisurely pull out a long spear from the spatial ring. The spear shaft was 8 feet, the spearhead 8 inches, and the body of the spear shaft was a dark purple color while the edge of the spear tip was dark red like blood. This spear was the penetrating rainbow. By now, even Wang Xuanji and Wang Yuhan were confused. He was repairing an inscription symbol. Just what would a spear do? Young man, what are you doing? The middle-aged martial artist looked on with fear and apprehension. Heavens! Drawing out such a long spear, and it looked like this spear was forged from dark purple elastic iron. Although it wasn't a treasure, it was certainly very sharp. He could only hope that this young fellow wasn't planning on using that sharp spear to poke his armor. Lin Ming looked at the middle-aged martial artist and said, I will destroy the superhuman strength symbol and draw a new one. Destroy? The middle-aged martial artist could hardly believe his ears. If it wasn't for the presence of Wang Xuanji, he would have beaten the little T until his mom didn't recognize him. You're insane. Once an inscription symbol was placed on a treasure, it was very difficult to destroy. This was because the inscription symbol's structure was imprinted deep within the treasure. As for the symbol mark, this was only manifested on the surface. For instance, for this superhuman strength symbol's diamond mark design, it was only a brand that symbolized who the inscription master was, and was merely a decorative effect. Lin Ming's flame design was the same, it was only an image that was drawn depending on the personality of the inscription master. If this decorative brand was ruined, it still would not destroy the complex internal structure of the inscription symbol deeply buried in the treasure. If someone really wanted to destroy this inscription symbol, they would normally need to have an alchemist or refiner who was familiar with controlling flames to burn it away. This had a high cost and it also took a long time, because the fire had to burn through the cobweb-like structure of the inscription symbol. To do this would not only destroy the inscription symbol, but would also lightly damage the treasure. But the most critical point was that it would affect future effects of inscription symbols that were placed on it. That was why in most situations, if the inscription symbol brand was damaged, one could only repair it. In truth, repairing was much more difficult than starting anew, but it was far better than destroying the inscription symbol. Lin Ming simply didn't understand the structure of the superhuman strength symbol or know its plan, so naturally he couldn't repair it. The approach he adopted was to destroy the superhuman strength symbol, and then draw a new one on. Lin Ming didn't know how to control fire. Therefore, in order to destroy the inscription symbol, he could only take out the penetrating rainbow spear. Boy, if you keep speaking such nonsense, then don't blame me for being rude. The middle-aged man was ultimately a martial artist at the pulse condensation period, and he was also an aristocrat. He had a certain status within Sky Fortune City. Although he was respectful to Wang Xuanji, to a baby boy of unknown origin like Lin Ming, he certainly could be rude. At this moment, Wang Xuanji let out a light cough. This light cough was like a thunderclap to the middle-aged martial artist's ears. The middle-aged martial artist shook, and then he immediately calmed down. Wang Xuanji said, "Your treasure is ranked as a medium-grade human step 1. Even a pulse condensation period martial artist would take time to destroy it, so why are you so nervous?" The middle-aged man said, "I'm sorry, it's just that this armor is my family's heirloom, so I am a bit anxious." Wang Xuanji was a martial artist whose cultivation was at the early Hutian stage. In terms of achievements in inscription, he was second to none. In front of someone like Wang Xuanji, the middle-aged man did not dare act rashly again. Wang Xuanji looked to Lin Ming as he waited for an explanation. Lin Ming was also an inscription master. How could he now know the taboo of destroying an inscription symbol? Lin Ming said, "President Wang, I dare to do so because I have a degree of certainty. Although I cannot guarantee that the treasure will not be damaged, but the damage won't be too great. Also, I have a means to repair it. The damage won't be too great. To use such a heavy long spear and brute force to destroy an inscription symbol that had already merged into one organic whole with the armor, and he could still say the damage won't be too great? Wang Xuanji frowned, and remained silent. If Lin Ming destroyed the inscription symbol in the armor, then not even he would be able to repair it anymore. Lin Ming said, with my cultivation, to destroy the inscription symbol in the armor won't take a short time. If President Wang feels that something is wrong at any time, then you can feel free to stop me. Wang Xuanji nodded. He could. Even if there was no true essence concentrated in it, this medium-grade human step armor was still incomparably hard. To destroy the inscription symbol would take a period of time. The middle-aged man also resigned himself to his fate. He decided that once he discovered something was amiss, he would immediately take the armor. At worst, the armor would simply not be repaired. Lin Ming placed the armor on the inscription platform, and then stood 10 feet back. He gripped the spear in his hand and held it out. Everyone present watched Lin Ming, wanting to see exactly what it was that he would do next. Chapter 119 Flowers in the Storm. Chapter 119 Flowers in the Storm. Chapter 119 Flowers in the Storm. Lin Ming placed the armor on the inscription platform, and then stepped 10 feet back. He gripped the spear in his hand and held it out. Everyone present watched Lin Ming, wanting to see exactly what it was he would do next. To destroy the inner structure of an inscription symbol by brute force, it was best to use an engraving knife. This was because the structure of the inscription symbol was like a spider web. Lin Ming had taken out such a large spear. How would that possibly be convenient? At that moment, Lin Ming pointed his spear, flicked his wrist, aimed at the inscription symbol and fiercely thrust it out. The piercing, howling sound of the spearhead was heard throughout the room. Not only that, but the spear thrust also contained an indomitable momentum. It continued forth like a galloping horse, followed by a surge of unrelenting, Buddha-murdering rage and a violent killing anger. This spear could easily pierce through a steel plate. The middle-aged man's eyes jumped. He subconsciously wanted to say stop, but at this moment, Lin Ming instantly withdrew the spear. That terrifying momentum was also restrained at that moment. The spear point was just above the armor, but it hadn't actually pierced it. The middle-aged man wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. He stared with wide eyes at Lin Ming's spear point, startled. What kind of abnormal control of strength was this? To thrust a spear forward with momentum like a herd of horses, and yet still be able to instantly restrain it so that the momentum did not overflow, yet the spear point still stopped at the exact right location. It had to be said that this was a heavy long spear made from dark purple elastic iron. Its weight should be no less than 800 jins. Just who was the young boy? With such strength at this age, this definitely wasn't a nobody, but though this youth had astonishing spear skills, just what was he planning on doing? A spear thrust, and the spear point suddenly stopping, but this spear didn't actually damage the inscription symbol in the armor. How was this related to inscription technique? Did this young boy actually just want to show off his impressive spear skills? Let alone the middle-aged man, even Wang Xuanji did not understand the meaning behind Lin Ming's spear. He could only marvel at Lin Ming's spear skills, but because he also knew Lin Ming's identity, he didn't find this too surprising. At this moment, Lin Ming thrust out his spear a second time. It was the exact same as a moment ago. The spear would stab out with nigh unstoppable momentum, and then just as it was about to contact the armor, it would suddenly stop. Next, Lin Ming began to repeatedly and quickly thrust out his spear. The spear thrusts were becoming increasingly fast and the momentum grew with each stab. Gradually, this momentum rolled into a strong heavenly wind, but Lin Ming's spear point was still like a delicate falling raindrop. This was another spear skill of the foundation spear technique, flowers in the storm. The middle-aged man was becoming increasingly alarmed with each growing second. This young man only looked to be around 15 or 16 years old, and yet he already had such strength at such a young age. The only one he could think of with such strength who also used a spear would be that dazzling youth of the 7 profound martial house that had recently become the rising star of Sky Fortune City. It shouldn't be. Lin Ming already had such abnormal, heaven-defying strength. If he also had such insights into inscription technique, then it would be too preposterous. He would simply be the reincarnation of some demon king. What was this young man doing? Lin Ming had already continuously thrust out his spear for several dozen breaths of time. The number of times his spear thrusted out should have been several hundred by now. With such high-speed spear moves, and the over 800 Jin penetrating rainbow, it was quite a heavy load on the muscles. If not for his solid foundation and freakish strength, as well as the fact that true essence had already thoroughly tempered his body, then he would have already damaged his muscles. Slowly, Wang Xuanji discovered the profound and mysterious principles that were implicit within Lin Ming's every thrust. He used his soul force to probe the armor, and to his disbelieving amazement, discovered that true essence infiltrated into the armor with each stab. And what made Wang Xuanji most surprised was that when he had used his soul force to track that infiltrating true essence, he found that the foreign true essence flowed along the structure of the inscription symbol, and with a strange and unfathomable power, began to actually disintegrate the structure. How was he doing this? Wang Xuanji drew a deep breath. He was too shocked to speak a single word. With each attack, the true essence turned into fine silk threads that flowed within the structure. To him, this was already unimaginable, but then those fine silk threads actually disintegrated the inscription symbol structures with an inscrutable and enigmatic power. How could such slender streams of true essence have such a mystifying might? Lin Ming was, of course, using the chaotic virtues combat meridians flow like silk technique. Not only did chaotic virtues combat meridians focus on overwhelming strength, but it focused even more on controlling strength. Strength training's flow like silk was a method of controlling strength. The so-called strength referred to the strength of the human body. This also included the force of true essence. After reaching the small success of flow like silk, this silk-like true essence would be at one's command. But this silk-like true essence didn't really have much of an effect. Because the tiny true essence threads didn't have much offensive power, in order to give it striking power, there was only one way. That was vibration. Wang Xuanji discovered that this strange strength which was disintegrating the inscription symbol structures was exactly this true essence vibration. This vibration was able to ignore defense, and be transmitted internally into any object. The true essence would turn into countless filaments, and each filament would vibrate as it passed through an object. As this vibration acted on every little structure, these tiny threads would create a truly terrifying amount of destruction. This was why when Lin Ming had thrusted out his spear at a stone column on the martial stage, that column had been instantly pulverized into an immeasurable number of small stones. This was because Lin Ming's cultivation of flow like silk was not thorough, the true essence silk threads were too few, and the frequency at which they vibrated was too low. If he managed to achieve the perfect stage of flow like silk, then the filaments of true essence threads would number in the trillions, and once these countless threads entered into the particles and molecules of an object, the frequency of vibrations would rise to a new, alarming level. In that situation, if the spear thrust touched the stone column, then that stone column would simply turn into fine dust that would scatter into the wind. Of course, Lin Ming was still very far from such a distant realm. If he actually managed to ever reach such a dreamlike boundary, then he would be able to eliminate every trace of the inscription symbol within the treasure without damaging the treasure at all. Rather than as it was now. With so many spear thrusts, the treasure must have sustained some damage. Wang Yuhan also realized that Wang Xuanji's face was colored in shock. She could not help but use a true essence sound transmission to ask, "Grandfather, what is Lin Ming doing?" Wang Xuanji sighed a lonely breath, and said, "Use your soul force to feel the inscription symbol structure of that armor, and then you'll know what he is doing." Wang Yuhan wondered what sort of discovery she would make by probing the armor with her soul force. She sent out her soul force and penetrated into the armor. Although Wang Yuhan's soul force was relatively weak, she had a vague feeling of what was occurring inside the armor. Surprised, she covered her mouth. "Grandfather, how is this possible?" Wang Xuanji shook his head and could only said with a rueful smile, "This is also the first time that I am seeing this technique. I could only guess that this effect is from a special kind of true essence manipulation method. This manipulation method is able to turn true essence into countless tiny threads, and each thread in turns is controlled to vibrate against the inscription symbol structure and disintegrate it. This is extremely demanding of one's control of true essence. I cannot begin to imagine how this is done. Wang Yuhan no longer inquired further. She only diligently closed her eyes and felt the energy changes within that treasure. This time when she looked, those filaments of true essence were like the intelligent gossamer threads of spider silk that broke apart the inscription symbol structures. She could only feel a convoluted, esoteric feeling. It was like a large door had been placed in front of her that contained all the myriad of infinite mysteries of the world. However, no matter how hard she tried to look, she could not see clearly. To have the feeling of all the mysteries between heaven and earth at her fingertips, but still be unable to touch them, this caused Wang Yuhan to be excited but also unbearably anxious. After a little less than half an incense stick of time had passed, Lin Ming had already let out 600 or 700 spear thrusts in a single breath. Although he had amazing physical strength, and he also had the true primal chaos formula supplementing his true essence, there was still a light sheen of perspiration on his forehead. At this time, Lin Ming finally stopped. He withdrew his spear, turned his right hand, and the penetrating rainbow disappeared back into the spatial ring. As for the treasure armor, besides some superficial white marks on the surface, there weren't any other damages. He had finally finished. Although flow like silk was incomparably exquisite, the structure of the inscription symbol and the armor had already blended together as one. Lin Ming had inevitably damaged part of the internal structure of the armor. This part was the true essence array that the refining master had placed within the treasure at its creation. This kind of damage would not lessen the defensive capabilities of the armor, however, in the future, if a martial artist concentrated their true essence in the armor, there would be some hindrance. But even so, it was enough for Wang Xuanji to be surprised. If it were an alchemy master who was familiar with controlling fire that had done this, it would still be impossible for them to achieve such an effect. After eliminating the old inscription symbol, Lin Ming didn't immediately start on drawing a new one. Instead, he sat in meditation and revolved the true primal chaos formula, restoring his true essence to its optimum condition. The true primal chaos formula had a very formidable effect in supplementing true essence. As soon as an incense stick of time had burned, Lin Ming had already made a complete recovery. He took out a piece of paper and began to write a list of materials that were readily available. Recently, Lin Ming had been in constant contact with Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription technique network, and as such, was already very familiar with the names of various materials. It was a different situation from when he had confused the materials from the Sky Spill continent and those from the realm of the gods. After he was done writing up the list, he handed it to the young reception lady of the Inscription Association and said, "If I could trouble you to prepare the materials from this list." "Oh, of course." The young reception lady responded as she received the list. At this moment, Wang Yuhan hurriedly said, "I'll go together with you." She was now Lin Ming's assistant. Getting materials ready was one of an assistant's key jobs. The Inscription Association was home to the largest and richest reserve of materials in the entire Sky Fortune Kingdom. Even if Lin Ming had listed a few difficult-to-find materials, they would still be very easy to prepare. The inscription symbol that Lin Ming planned to create today was a simplified version of the Ice Frost Guard. This type of inscription symbol was used specifically for armor. Not only could it increase the true essence-gathering speed of martial artists, but it could also provide a slight boost in strengthening the defense. If this was the original version of the Ice Frost Guard, then one could also use the inscription technique Ring of Frozen Ice. This technique would activate during an attack, and would send out a freezing circular wave of true essence, which would affect an opponent's movement speed by drastically reducing it. However, the original Ice Frost Guard required a number of materials that were very rare and precious. There were several materials that not even the Inscription Association would necessarily be able to find. Not only that, but today was Lin Ming's first attempt at drawing the Ice Frost Guard. If he tried to draw up the far more complex original version, then he would have a greater risk of failure. Hence, he decided to draw up a simplified version. With Lin Ming's current cultivation and level of technique, the simplified version of the Ice Frost Guard was relatively easy. 15 grams of star rock ground into powder, and mix that into half a cup of third-level vicious beast blood. Mix well. Take juice extract from crushed black bone grass and add that into 3 times the amount of cold spring water. Lin Ming sent Wang Yuhan a true essence sound transmission and rapidly listed out the materials he needed and how he needed them processed. Many of these material preparation instructions were exceedingly complex and detailed. Chapter 120 Ice Frost Guard. Chapter 120 Ice Frost Guard. Chapter 120 Ice Frost Guard. Lin Ming sent Wang Yuhan a true essence sound transmission and rapidly listed the materials he required and how he needed them processed. Many of these material preparation instructions were exceedingly complex and detailed. However, Wang Yuhan had a deep history of inscription technique learnings, and her memory was quite keen. Lin Ming spoke what would seem like an endless string of unintelligible garble, but Wang Yuhan only nodded and said, "Understood," before proceeding to prepare the complex materials. Wang Yuhan was very skillful at processing the various materials. Each time a material passed through her hands, it was like a magician that was working his magic with smoke and fire. The materials changed to a glossy color, and this tedious procedure, under Wang Yuhan's dexterous and pale fingers, was filled with a beautiful aesthetic sense like passing clouds and flowing water. In terms of processing materials, Lin Ming felt that Wang Yuhan's skill at this task was above his. The majority of inscription apprentices' first contact with inscription techniques was with handling and processing materials, but Lin Ming had actually skipped this step and gone straight to the top. Assisted by Wang Yuhan, Lin Ming's inscription symbol plan proceeded much more smoothly. Lin Ming began to revolve the overbearing soul tactic, and with a turn of his hand, a drop of chilly deep blue liquid rose into the air. Lin Ming began to wave his fingers, and the drop turned into a series of strikingly brilliant rainbow lights. As the first foundation line was drawn, Lin Ming waved his hand again, and a second drop of liquid floated up. The stunning rainbow light shined once more, but this time, a faint afterglow from the first foundation line was left behind in the eyes of those watching. Wonderfully stunning runes appeared in the air one after another, as they constantly superimposed on each other. In the times that the runes flowed into the air and mixed, Lin Ming rarely failed. Wang Yuhan had already finished processing all the materials, so she was standing on the sidelines staring with her large and beautiful eyes, unblinking as she stared at Lin Ming's every move, lest she miss even a single detail. But to Wang Yuhan, it was impossible to learn a foreign inscription creation method by only watching. Inscription techniques involved a very fine and complex control of soul force, and not only that, but if there was even a single slight error in the foundation symbols or lines, then it would cause a massive change in its effects. These details were things that could not be seen with one's own eyes. Wang Yuhan naturally understood these things, but she still hoped that through watching, she would be able to obtain some inspirations. Of her grandfather Wang Xuanzhi's skills, she had already learned everything that there was to learn. The only things that he couldn't teach her were due to her low martial arts cultivation. However, Lin Ming's inscription technique was different. It was from a completely different school of thought from the Sky Fortune Kingdom. Beyond that, it was a much more mysterious and profound technique. While she did not dare to dream that Lin Ming would teach her these mystical inscription technique methods, it was still a rare opportunity to look in from the sidelines. As time passed bit by bit, Wang Yuhan became increasingly startled. Lin Ming did not even pause for a second in his drawing process. It was as if each movement was born out of his most basic instincts, and each movement was fluid at his fingertips and without any hint of hesitation. These actions may have seemed simple, but Wang Yuhan was an expert who had been exposed to inscription techniques since birth, and she could tell that in these random drawings of Lin Ming, there were 7 or 8 changes in the intensity of soul force. These rapid changes were so fast that unless one went through a long and grueling period of practice, it was simply not possible for them to be imprinted in the body's reflexive memory like this. As a quarter hour passed, there were already several dozen runes that were floating in midair, and became an increasingly complex inscription symbol as they layered upon each other. Generally, only a senior inscription master or even a truly accomplished elder of inscription technique would be able to draw this. A beginning inscription master simply didn't have the true essence reserves to support such a demanding process. But Wang Yuhan wasn't too surprised about this. Lin Ming's strength had already touched upon the realm of a martial artist at the large success of bone forging stage. In consideration of that, to have such a thick and pure true essence was nothing unusual. After another quarter hour passed, there were more than 70 symbols that had accumulated in front of Lin Ming. At this time, Lin Ming finally withdrew his hands, and all the glittering airborne symbols began to coalesce and converge upon each other like rays of shining light that were drawing together. For a brief moment, the inscription hall seemed as if it was filled with a number of wondrous stars, and eventually, they all blended together into a single symbol. Lin Ming added a single stroke, and the inscription symbol turned into a flame-shaped pattern, and gently fell like a feather onto the armor. With a kai-kai sound as the symbol touched down, a flame mark appeared on the armor. At this moment, something amazing occurred. There was a slight jitter as if the armor were shivering, and then with the flame mark as the center, blue-colored waves began to proliferate and ripple outwards. The plain black war armor gradually began to change to an ice blue color. Millimeter? Wang Xuanji's eyes widened. Could an inscription symbol actually change the color of a treasure? In his lifetime, Wang Xuanji had read an immense number of ancient texts. He knew that in these texts, there were certain inscription symbols that because they had a rich, strong power and affinity towards one of the 5 elements, once that inscription symbol was placed on a treasure it could change its color. For instance, a fire attribute inscription could cause a treasure to be burning red, an ice attribute inscription could cause a treasure to be icy blue, and a metal affinity inscription could cause a treasure to glitter. However, this was only records that were in the ancient texts. Because Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription technique was limited, although there were some inscription symbols that contained a hint of elemental power, such as the water parting symbol or the gold bell symbol, Wang Xuanji had never heard of an inscription symbol that could change the color of a treasure. Today would be his first time witnessing such a miracle. The middle-aged martial artist only saw that his armor had turned a frosty blue. He didn't know the reason why or what it meant. At this time, Wang Xuanji excitedly stepped forward and took the armor in his hands. He let his true essence flow into the armor to feel the effect of the instruction symbol. With this test, Wang Xuanji took a deep, disbelieving breath. The true essence gathering effect was increased by 30%. On a normal treasure, a 30% increase wasn't too impressive. However, this treasure had been slightly damaged. If the treasure was wholly complete, then the increased effect range would have been at least 36%. Even if Wang Xuanji had personally drawn up an inscription symbol himself and placed it on an untarnished treasure, the best he could manage would be 42%. 36% to 42% was only missing 6%. This Lin Ming was only 15 years old. But in terms of inscription accomplishments, in comparison to himself who had been steeped within the art of inscription for nearly 100 years, was there only such a small disparity between them? This caused Wang Xuanji to feel a deep sense of frustration. And not only that, but this inscription symbol that Lin Ming had drawn had also spontaneously created an icy layer of cold, protective film around the armor that was able to increase its defensive capabilities. Although the increase was not too high, it was still extremely rare for an inscription symbol to produce 2 different results together. In Sky Fortune Kingdom's School of Inscription Techniques, there were no more than 30 different kinds of inscription symbols that could accomplish this, and the value of each was more than 3,000 gold tael. He was a monstrous genius of inscription, while simultaneously having been able to comprehend a martial intent. His perception of the Tao of martial arts could only be called heaven-defying. There were simply too many dazzling halos that were concentrated on his single body, that even the gods would be jealous. Wang Xuanji tossed the armor to the middle-aged martial artist and said, "Give it a look." The middle-aged martial artist poured his true essence into the armor, and a moment later, a pleasantly surprised expression crossed his face. As the owner of the armor, he was naturally familiar with the condition of his armor. "Satisfied?" Wang Xuanji casually asked. "Satisfied. Satisfied." The middle-aged martial artist quickly nodded. He looked at Lin Ming, and this time there was a touch of respect in his gaze. The middle-aged martial artist was not an inscription master, and didn't have much of an understanding about inscription techniques, so he only knew that this young boy was amazing. But amazing to what extent, he didn't have a clear idea. "This is President Wang's apprentice?" A famous teacher has a truly outstanding disciple. Terrific. Extraordinary. My apprentice. Wang Xuanji said with a self-deprecating smile, I'm not able to teach such a fierce apprentice. President Wang is too modest. However, this little friend is truly the most talented young inscription master that I've ever seen. The middle-aged man said a few words of flattery. After all, he could tell that Lin Ming was an inscription master with an overabundance of talent. Flattering him would only benefit him in the future. However, at this point, Wang Xuanji said in a tepid tone, if you have nothing else, then you may go. The incoming words of flattery that the middle-aged man was about to say caught in his throat. He embarrassedly smiled and said, then I will not disturb you. I will come back another day to give thanks. The middle-aged man apologetically smiled and then left. At this moment, Wang Xuanji was not in a very good mood. He had painstakingly invested all of his efforts and care into Wang Yuhan, in the hopes that he could raise Wang Yuhan into the most preeminent inscription master that the Sky Fortune Kingdom had ever seen. However, he did not know where the hell this little boy Lin Ming had come from. Seeing him in action simply caused Wang Xuanji to feel a great sense of defeat. Let alone Wang Yuhan, in a couple of years, even he might be surpassed by this abnormally devilish boy. He had spent the greater part of his life studying inscription techniques, but was he really so inferior in talent? Wang Xuanji's heart inevitably produced such a thought. Lin Ming did not know what sort of thoughts Wang Xuanji was contemplating. He took a short rest, and then prepared to solve the second problem. The second client was an aristocratic family's young son, around 20 or 30 years old. He already bore witness to Lin Ming weave his wonderful inscription technique, so after seeing Lin Ming call him, he hurried over and talked about his problem as he laid out a pile of materials. Seeing this pile of materials, Lin Ming was quite happy. These were all rare and precious materials. His choice of becoming a guest inscription master was right. With so many rare and precious materials at his disposal to practice, his inscription technique would be able to progress by leaps and bounds. Before long, he would be able to draw up the body inscriptions symbol. For the entire afternoon, Lin Ming solved a number of different problems. In order to avoid interfering factors, Lin Ming was given a separate room at the Inscription Association. After he obtained the materials, the door would shut, and only Lin Ming and Wang Yuhan would be inside. Wang Yuhan was responsible for preparing and processing the materials, and Lin Ming would then begin to draw up the inscription symbol. Drawing inscription symbols was very consuming of one's soul force and true essence. A low-level or intermediate inscription master would usually be completely exhausted after drawing just one inscription symbol. A high-level inscription master or an elder inscription master would usually be able to draw up 2 to 3, or sometimes even 3 to 4. But Lin Ming, in this one afternoon of time, had continuously drawn up 5 different inscription symbols. And now, he was even planning on creating his 6th. This gave the already apprehensive Wang Yuhan even more worries. She was only responsible for handling materials, and that was taxing enough on her true essence reserves. It left her feeling weak. But this Lin Ming fellow was just a tireless machine. In fact, after each inscription symbol drawing was completed, Lin Ming did have a very high rate of consumption. After every one he would begin to revolve the overbearing soul tactic to nourish his lost soul force, and he would also revolve the true primal chaos formula to supplement his true essence. Chapter 121, The Vanished Blood Symbol. Chapter 121, The Vanished Blood Symbol. Relying on his pure soul force and deep reserves of true essence, Lin Ming was able to continuously persist throughout the entire afternoon. During this time period, he reached the limit of his ability several times. But this was also a method of practice. Without being pushed to the limit, it would be difficult to progress. When his true essence neared complete consumption, Lin Ming never begrudged himself to pull out a true essence stone and then enter into the ethereal martial intent state. Under the state of ethereal martial intent, the true essence throughout Lin Ming's body would spontaneously move at a pace several times faster than normal, with a near-perfect path of circulation. Under this cultivation state, his advancement was very fast. Gradually, the sun began to fall down below the western horizon. The light that once peeked into the room began to dim down. Wang Yuhan lit a lamp. Seeing that Lin Ming was still sitting in meditation and regulating his breathing, she hesitated several times as she debated whether or not to disturb him. After a while, Wang Yuhan could not bear it anymore, and she finally said, "Mr. Lin, we should eat a meal."
Oh,
"Yes, of course, you eat first. Just bring me back something nice. I'm almost done adjusting my condition, and then I will finish this inscription symbol drawing first." Drawing another one? Wang Yuhan was at a loss for words. This would be the 7th one. To draw up 7 inscription symbols in the afternoon, and not only that, but each one being very complex, with dozens of symbols and lines that needed to fuse together, not even a top-level inscription master would be able to persist through such a task. Wang Yuhan no longer compared herself to Lin Ming, but placed Lin Ming as a level of character similar to her own grandfather. Shaking her head, Wang Yuhan headed down to have dinner. After eating dinner, she came back, and sure enough, Lin Ming had begun already drawing the 7th inscription symbol, and was almost halfway done. Wang Yuhan moved to the side and set down the plate of food that she had brought up. She quietly watched every movement of Lin Ming, earnestly committing them to memory, and occasionally she would even subconsciously reach out her hand and follow Lin Ming's movements. Although she knew that even if she copied these movements, it was to no avail of discerning the deep mysteries within them. As time slowly passed, Wang Yuhan looked at those gorgeous and brilliant inscription lines, and then turned to Lin Ming. She watched as his fingertips danced in the air, and shimmering lights followed his incomparably smooth control of true essence. She also saw the fine beads of sweat that covered his face, and his incomparably focused expression. Gradually, Wang Yuhan entered a state like she was lost in a trance. Her vision unconsciously moved from Lin Ming's face to his fingers and back again. At that moment, she felt like she had been infected by the young boy's dedicated focus. Wang Yuhan finally snapped out of her daze as Lin Ming let out a light fu sound. The several dozens of inscription symbols and lines began to condense into one, and with that sparkle of light, Wang Yuhan managed to regain her composure. She was somewhat flustered, and her pretty face blushed. 7th. Lin Ming let loose a long breath and completely collapsed back into his chair. Now, he didn't even have the strength to move a finger. "There. Mr. Lin, the food is getting cold."
oh,
Lin Ming propped himself up and received the plate of food. He took big gulping bites as he ate. Wang Yuhan was sitting somewhat cramped at the side, quietly gazing at the hourglass in the room, watching the sand fall, grain by grain. In the foundation lines, when drawing up the rock pattern, it is better to add a fold-shaped structure. Lin Ming mindlessly remarked after finishing half of his meal. Wang Yuhan was slightly stunned, and then felt a great happiness followed by an overwhelming exultation. Lin Ming was teaching her inscription techniques. This kind of inscription technique was from beyond the borders of the Sky Fortune Kingdom, and moreover its degree of exquisiteness and subtlety far surpassed anything that the Sky Fortune Kingdom School of Inscription could ever hope to achieve. By now Lin Ming had recovered some of his true essence. He readily drew out a rock line pattern in the air, slowing his tempo as much as he could so that Wang Yuhan had time to clearly see the changes in soul force. In particular, when drawing that folded pattern, he lowered the speed to a bare minimum. Lin Ming knew what the driving reason was behind Wang Yuhan's request to serve as his assistant. She had accompanied him for an entire afternoon, helped a great deal, and also expended much of her own true essence and soul force. Yet, the things she could learn were extremely limited. She was a girl who was also the beloved granddaughter of the Inscription Association's president. Such a proud girl had actually dropped her reservedness to act as his assistant for this afternoon. If Lin Ming didn't return the favor, then he would have felt bad about himself. Therefore, in the free time that he had while eating his meal, Lin Ming continuously taught Wang Yuhan several foundation lines. Although just learning these basic foundation lines was far from being able to use them in any sort of practical application, Lin Ming believed that with Wang Yuhan's aptitude towards inscription, along with her unceasing efforts to strive towards greater heights of inscription technique, that she would inevitably be able to derive a great deal of inspiration from this in the future. "Thank you, Mr. Lin," Wang Yuhan said with a heartfelt expression of gratitude. "I want to thank you instead. Will Mr. Lin be coming back tomorrow?" "Tomorrow? Millimeter, I should come back sometime in the afternoon. In the morning I have to practice at the 7 Profound Martial House. Because of the core disciple test, the 7 Profound Martial House had promised that Lin Ming would be able to use the 7 major killing arrays for 10 full days. Time at the 7 major killing arrays was extremely valuable. It would be a waste if he didn't use it because he was practicing inscription techniques instead. Can I also be your assistant for tomorrow? Wang Yuhan asked with anticipation. Lin Ming brightly smiled and said, "Of course you can." That evening, Lin Ming returned to the 7 Profound Martial House and began to digest what he had learned by practicing today. In the afternoon, Lin Ming had spent 3.5 hours to draw up a total of 7 inscription symbols. The materials for these inscriptions were all precious. Lin Ming had many faults in drawing up the inscription symbols, which caused some of the materials to be wasted. However, he hadn't yet encountered a situation in which the inscription symbol would go out of control and then collapse with an explosion. As long as the whole thing didn't come tumbling down in a fiery explosion, some errors could be tolerated. According to the regulations of the Inscription Association, customers had to pay the reward with materials. The total price of the service was twice that of the materials used. Sometimes they also needed to pay certain fees for services rendered. Of the materials that were left over, 60% went to the guest inscription master, and 40% went to the Inscription Association. Lin Ming took a few materials that he could use for himself and exchanged the rest with the Inscription Association for points. At the rate I'm earning points, I'll probably have enough points after 10 more days to buy some of the materials I need from the Inscription Association. As for the rarer materials, I'll need to wait until my inscription technique improves further, and only then will I have a chance of getting them. The materials for those 2 body inscription symbols are just too difficult to collect. Through the process of earning points, I can also cultivate. I've been creating inscription symbols continuously and using many different types of materials. Not only is my inscription technique progressing quickly, but even my soul force is slowly growing. The true primal chaos formula is also improving. I can feel that I'm faintly approaching the small success stage of the second layer. I hadn't actually thought that I could practice so many things in a single manner. My consumption of true essence stones is really fast. In just one day I've already used 3. This is simply burning money away. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, true essence stones, according to their degree of purity, ranged between 500 gold taels to 1,000 gold taels. The true essence stones that the 7 Profound Martial House handed down to its disciples were probably the most inferior kind, at 500 gold taels. But the more than 100 true essence stones that the Crown Prince had gifted to Lin Ming actually belonged to the lustrous top-grade pure essence stones, which had a value of 1,000 gold taels each. True essence stones were very scarce in the Sky Fortune Kingdom. It was extremely difficult to find a massive amount of them. In turn, it was difficult to trade true essence stones for gold. Even the wealthy aristocratic families would find it difficult to afford such an expensive price. 4 or 5 true essence stones together was equal to a treasure. Lin Ming had over 200 true essence stones on hand and he used them every day like he was eating candy. There weren't many people in the entire Sky Fortune City that were able to do as he did. I'll probably use up the true essence stones I have in 2 months. I'll have to have the Crown Prince help me buy them. At worst I'll just reimburse the money. After becoming a guest inscription master, Lin Ming found a way to cultivate that was also able to make money. He estimated that in a single month he would be able to make more than 200,000 gold taels without a problem. Of course, this was on the premise that there were enough rich martial artists that were seeking his services. A normal guest inscription master would be able to perform 1 or 2 tasks every day. This was because even if they could continue to do more, they would not be in an optimal condition to do so, and it would be difficult to draw a perfect inscription symbol and thus harm their reputation. These inscription masters usually worked 20 days every month. It was a good result to make 20 or 30,000 gold taels at the end, assuming that they did not fail. But Lin Ming was able to draw up inscription symbols 7 or 8 times a day. In 1 month he could work the entire 30 days. He was simply a freak of nature. After he bathed himself, Lin Ming stayed in the bathtub and entered into the ethereal martial intent state. He let the true essence in his body revolve on its own as it followed its perfect path of circulation. Like this, Lin Ming sat for 2 hours. Because the true essence circulation continued at high speed, the water in the tub began to heat up and give off a white fog. Soon, the entire bathroom was filled with a dense cloud of water vapor. Every time Lin Ming let loose a breath, his breath stirred a whirlpool in the air. At midnight, Lin Ming awoke from his ethereal martial intent state. The countless tiny units in his body began to stir, and the vibrating true essence overflowed from his body like a gushing tide. The mist in the room suddenly disappeared. However, because the mist had been in the room for a long time, the entire room was dripping wet, and even Lin Ming's clothes were soaked. As he stood up from the bath, Lin Ming inadvertently glanced at the purple gold flexible armor that the Crown Prince had gifted to him. With a glance, Lin Ming suddenly froze. This is... Lin Ming grabbed the purple gold flexible armor. He looked at it, startled, and felt a great shock in his heart. How did that Peak Hutian master's blood symbol that he had drawn with his own blood essence disappear? Today, he had been to the Inscription Association. For safety concerns, Lin Ming had worn the purple gold flexible armor. It was fine then, but after taking a bath, he discovered that the blood symbol had disappeared. It was more accurate to say that most of the blood symbol had disappeared. There was still a tiny corner of the blood symbol that remained, but even that was already completely blurred. This vague feeling, it was similar to ink being soaked by water. Could it be that the mist from the bath had infiltrated into the blood symbol and ruined it? If so, then that Peak Hutian master was simply too horrible and unbelievable. Or, had the Crown Prince been cheated? Was this flexible armor itself a fake? No, that couldn't be right. When the Crown Prince had given him this armor, he had personally proved it with his own soul force, and had truly found that it contained the vital blood essence of a formidable master. Moreover, it was written with a supremely exquisite technique in the flexible armor, penetrating it, and had already become part of the treasure. That blood symbol was just like an inscription symbol that was placed on a treasure. Only by using some sort of special method, for instance having an alchemist use fire to burn it away, or using the flow like silk technique like Lin Ming did, could one remove it. Otherwise, it was basically impossible to separate it without completely destroying the treasure. So what the hell had just happened? Chapter 122 The Magic Cube Reappears. Chapter 122 The Magic Cube Reappears. Chapter 122 The Magic Cube Reappears. Lin Ming could not understand. Was it possible that sometime today, someone had tried to ambush him with some secret, arcane ability that was blocked by the blood symbol, and thus the blood symbol disappeared? That should be impossible. If someone really did have such profound abilities, and they could cause the blood symbol to disappear in a situation without him knowing, then it would have to be someone that was at least of the Xiantian stage. But that kind of person could simply kill him with a flick of their finger, and those major characters weren't people that Zhu Yang or the 10th Prince could possibly hope to request. Lin Ming really couldn't understand what was going on. Instead, he decided to put away the flexible armor, and then go to bed. That night, perhaps because of the overconsumption of his soul force and true essence, Lin Ming slept very soundly. He blurrily stumbled in an endless realm of jet-black space that was incomparably vast. It was as if he was floating in the dark, starry night within the infinite cosmos. Countless fluttering transparent ghosts floated around him, and in these transparent ghosts were countless points of light, as if they were mirrors shining back on him. The points of light varied in size, from smaller than a grain of sand to spheres the size of his palm. They followed a strangely mysterious pattern of movement. At the center of all these bright lights was an orb of luminescent light, a foot in diameter. This orb of light emitted a dim, creamy white halo, which gave off a very warm and soft feeling. This was the space within the magic cube. Lin Ming was surprised beyond measure. How did he arrive back at the magic cube? After the first time that he had entered the magic cube had entered into his body and hidden there. He had been unable to summon it or even touch it again, so why was he suddenly able to enter into it today? Although this was a dream, after realizing that this was the space within the magic cube, Lin Ming's consciousness instantly sobered, but he was still unable to retreat from the space of the magic cube. Of course, Lin Ming was not prepared to leave now. His gaze fell on the soul fragments that shined like liquid stars. He looked at them with some excitement, and even more solemnity. At first, it was a soul fragment that had brought him so many opportunities. Had it not been for that soul fragment, then even if he had comprehended an ethereal martial intent, then he would have at most stopped at the Hutian stage, and would have been unable to progress to the Xiantian stage. Without a doubt, these soul fragments contained an inexhaustible supply of buried legendary treasures. But they also contained a hidden murderous intent. If he was not careful, then Lin Ming's consciousness would be swallowed by the soul fragment, and he would forever be beyond redemption. Was every soul fragment an ownerless soul? Could there be certain fragments that still contained a spirit mark that hadn't been erased yet? A human soul was composed of two parts. One was its memory, and the other was a spirit mark. If the spirit mark was erased, then only the memory would be left over and it would be an ownerless soul. An ownerless soul only had instinct, and didn't have intelligence. If the spirit mark was not erased, then the soul fragment would have its own independent consciousness. If he swallowed this kind of soul fragment, then Lin Ming simply had no way to deal with a soul fragment that had a spiritual mark. Even if he managed to suppress it, it might even cause him to have a split personality and be constantly disoriented. Lin Ming stood among the vast, starry black space for a long time. He was not in a hurry to do anything. He skeptically stared at the palm-sized, shining light fragments, not daring to go near them. As for that large ball of light that was dead center in the middle of all the other light fragments, Lin Ming definitely avoided it. He very much suspected that the large orb of light he saw was formed from that mysterious woman that he saw in the dreamland. Millimeter? This is. As Lin Ming gazed at that large ball of light, he suddenly discovered that there was something unusual about it. On the ball of light suddenly appeared a faint blush, as if it was colored with blood. Blood! This sudden idea turned Lin Ming's mind cold. The blood symbol on the purple gold flexible armor was also formed by blood. He remembered that when he had worn the flexible armor, the location of where the magic cube was sleeping, hidden within him, was over his heart, which was probably the same position as that blood symbol had been. Was it possible that? Was the flexible armor's blood symbol absorbed by the magic cube? The magic cube had absorbed the blood essence of a peak Hutian master that had been in the flexible armor? This sudden dawning caused Lin Ming to feel incredulity. Perhaps it was precisely because of this absorption of blood that he was able to enter into the space of the magic cube once again. The magic cube was able to absorb blood essence. The discovery made Lin Ming happy and worried at the same time. He was happy because he had discovered some secrets of the magic cube. What he worried about was, this secret gave him an ominous and evil feeling. This magic cube was obviously not some friendly object. But anyway, now that he was back in the magic cube again, this was a prime opportunity. Of course, this also meant danger. Lin Ming stood in the magic cube's ocean of star space for a long time. Which one these soul fragments should he choose? With so many soul fragments, casually selecting one would just be testing exactly how much luck he had. If he obtained one that was useless, then it would have all been in vain. Lin Ming watched one soul fragment after another, but he was unable to see what was inside. These countless soul shards were like tens of thousands of jade stones. Some of these jade stones might have the purest quality white jade, and some might have nothing at all. And in some, there might even be a devil lurking inside. This soul fragment is too bright, it's too similar to the stars, I shouldn't touch it. This one is too small, it's even tinier than a grain of rice. The first time I was here I chose a soul fragment around this size, but now that my strength has improved, I should be able to choose a larger one, but just how much larger? Why is this red? This gives off a very demonic and evil feeling, as it was stained with blood. It seems full of evil spirits and dark influences. Perhaps this soul fragment's master. I'm afraid that before his death he was most likely a murderous devil that slaughtered countless people. This type of person has too deep an obsession, I shouldn't touch this one. There's also a golden red color. What sort of principles would make a soul fragment a golden red color? Facing such an important choice, even the normally resolute Lin Ming became indecisive. If I had to choose one then. Lin Ming finally locked his eyes on a mung bean-sized soul fragment. This soul fragment wasn't too bright, and it also wasn't too large or small. He cautiously approached this soul fragment, and carefully made sure to avoid contact with any other soul fragments. As he approached, Lin Ming suddenly wondered what would happen if he probed the soul fragment with his soul force. With that in mind, Lin Ming attempted to revolve the overbearing soul tactic and use his soul force to sense the soul fragment. A martial artist's soul force and spirit mark were connected. If misused, it would be vulnerable to attack. If a soul was damaged, then it was very difficult to cure. At least, in the entirety of the Sky Fortune Kingdom, Lin Ming hadn't seen anything that could help repair a soul. Lin Ming's idea was to investigate the soul fragment with his soul force, and see if he could obtain some valuable information. It even might be possible to attempt to read some memories, and to take a look at these memories to see if they would be useful before deciding to swallow that soul fragment. However, as Lin Ming's soul force came into contact with that soul fragment suddenly turned into a stream of lightning that flew into Lin Ming's soul. Lin Ming simply didn't have any time to react. With a whish sound, the ownerless soul fragment had already submerged into Lin Ming's sea of consciousness, aimed at Lin Ming's spirit mark, and launched a violent attack on his psyche. Damn! Lin Ming hadn't expected this result. He just felt as if the tip of a knife was repeatedly and maliciously stabbing into his brain without hesitation. This kind of severe, body-gripping pain made his vision go dark, and he almost fainted on the spot. My cultivation is already so much stronger than before, but this pain is still so irresistibly overwhelming. It is such a small piece of soul consciousness and yet it's actually so strong. The power of a soul had no relations with true essence, it only depended on the soul itself. Lin Ming had used the overbearing soul tactic during the long period in which he had used inscription techniques, and his soul force had naturally grown. But the ownerless soul fragment that he had chosen now was larger and brighter than the first soul fragment he had absorbed. So to swallow this soul fragment up was 10 times as hard. Lin Ming's sea of consciousness once again became a battlefield. The deep pain within his brain was just like countless insects that were chewing through his mind. A multitude of complex and confusing scenes emerged in his mind. Lin Ming grasped his head, bore the soul-wrenching pain and revolved the overbearing soul tactic, holding fast to his quickly ebbing consciousness. With his previous experience, Lin Ming was much calmer this time. The head-splitting pain also caused him to fall into a dazed stupor, but Lin Ming knew that once he fainted and lost his self-awareness, then he would without a doubt die. As long as he was able to force his way through this period and exhaust that ownerless soul, he would win. However, this soul fragment's inherent soul force was far superior to the last one's. Lin Ming clenched his teeth, defending the last pure and bright bastion of his mind. The first time I did not know the overbearing soul tactic, and only depended on my heart of martial arts to endure. But this second time, my soul force is much stronger and my heart of martial arts is more complete. How can I lose here? Ha! In Lin Ming's sea of consciousness, there was a giant storm that was raging as the ownerless soul fragment constantly consumed itself in its battle with Lin Ming's spirit mark. Gradually, the shining rays began to dim down. The aching pain came flooding in like a limitless tsunami. Lin Ming gritted his teeth and could only hang on as this agony coursed through his mind. After an unknown amount of time, this aching feeling finally weakened as it began to slowly die down. By now, Lin Ming's whole body was soaked in sweat and cold to the touch. After a long time, that ownerless soul fragment had gradually lost its instinct and turned into complete pure soul energy, and then slowly integrated into Lin Ming's sea of consciousness. Opening his eyes, Lin Ming was surprised to find that he had already left the vast, starry space within the magic cube. He was back in his simple log cabin, staring at the wooden ceiling. Seeing such a familiar scene let him feel at ease. Reviewing the memories in his mind, Lin Ming felt another headache creeping up. This kind of feeling was as if he had gone through several days of sleepless nights, and thus his mind hurt. Array formations, array patterns, array diagrams, charms. This was probably an array master. After clearly examining these, Lin Ming didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. His luck was just bad, he had actually taken in the memories of an array master. An array master was truly strong, that was without question. One only needed to look at the 10,000 killing array, the 7 major killing arrays of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning, the exquisite pagoda, and the sea jade platform to see just how inconceivably strong an array master was. One of the 7 founders of the 7 profound valleys was one who especially studied array methods. If he was able to create a massive array like the exquisite pagoda and sell it to the Sky Fortune Kingdom, its cost would be at least 10 million gold taels. However, it was impossible for Lin Ming to arrange this array. The major arrays of the 7 profound martial house were created through a collaboration of several Xiantian masters working together. The total quantity of true essence needed was truly terrifying, but without using such a large array, a normal array only had a very limited benefit. Although he was slightly frustrated, Lin Ming did not lose heart. This soul fragment had a very rich memory, it was not solely array methods. Moreover, about arrays, it may be temporarily useless to Lin Ming now, but that did not mean that it would be useless in the future. Chapter 123 Three Kinds of Martial Skills. Chapter 123 Three Kinds of Martial Skills. Chapter 123 Three Kinds of Martial Skills. In fact, in a sense, an inscription master was also one kind of array master. An inscription symbol could be called an array formation, except that the inscription symbol was on a much smaller scale and the total amount of true essence needed was also correspondingly low. However, for a large-scale array formation, one needed to be at least a Hutian stage master in order to begin studying it. Lin Ming took a cursory glance at these array formations in his mind. It seemed that not even a Xiantian master would have any hope in arranging these. If I want to learn array formations, I don't know in what year or what month I'll be able to do so. Lin Ming shook his head and completely sealed up all the memories. In the space of the magic cube, there were tens of thousands of souls. It was simply impossible to always choose one that was useful. It all came down to his own luck. After he placed away the array-related memories for the time being, Lin Ming endured further headaches and continued to read the memories of the soul fragment. True solar fire law, it requires godly strength to practice, and it is also incomplete, useless. Collapsing moon sinking star, this is a top-tier martial skill, but my cultivation is far from being able to use it, useless. Valiant dragon's roar, this is also a top-tier martial skill, but I still can't learn it. Lin Ming kept searching. The soul fragment's memories were very rich, however, there were very few things that were useful. The majority of cultivation methods and martial skills required a very high level of cultivation or power in order to begin practicing them. These are millimeter, woman, feelings, sects, conspiracies. These are the life memories of a great person within the realm of the gods. But these things are also useless. Lin Ming had sealed away the memories of the array formations. As for these life memories of the realm of the gods, Lin Ming simply discarded them all. Well, Lin Ming's heart jumped, and his spirit immediately rose and the headache he was feeling calmed down a little. Heretical God Force. Is this a martial skill? Cultivation method? Lin Ming sunk his mind into this memory, and to his surprise, the heretical God Force memory was fairly complete. Most importantly, if he wanted to cultivate the heretical God Force, it did not have any mandatory requirement for cultivation. Even someone at the body transformation stage would be able to practice it. The secret legacy manuals of the Sky Spill continent were divided into 3 different kinds. The first kind was a cultivation method manual. This was used for martial artists to accumulate true essence and enhance their cultivation. The cultivation method manual was the foundation of all, and was also the rarest of all the secret manuals. A sect didn't need to have good martial skills, but they must have a good cultivation method manual. The second kind were martial skills. Different martial skills would utilize the true essence and strength of human body in various ways in order to attack an enemy. The third kind were movement skills. These movement skills were similarly a utilization method to coordinate true essence with the strength of the human body, and thus enhance one's speed. But Lin Ming saw that this heretical God Force actually didn't fit any of those 3 categories. Using heretical God Force's mystical ability, it was possible to greatly enhance one's strength for a short time, and true essence would also increase. Heretical God Force was not a cultivation method, but it also wasn't a martial skill or movement ability. It was actually able to make a martial artist's martial skills stronger, and their movement abilities quicker. In that elder's memories of the realm of the gods, this heretical God Force was one of the rare auxiliary secret techniques. In all of those secret techniques, this heretical God Force is one of the most precious. Lin Ming was pleasantly surprised. Although most of the memories weren't useful, but if there was actually one that was incomparably precious, then it was worth it. Lin Ming continued to examine the heretical God Force. This secret technique was divided into 6 different stages. The first stage was able to enhance a human's strength and true essence by 50%, and the second stage could enhance one's abilities by 100%, the third 150%, and so on, until the final 6th stage, which could enhance one's original strength and true essence force by 3 times. Of course, 3 times the strength and true essence force also corresponded to 3 times the consumption rate of strength and true essence. But to Lin Ming, this wasn't an overly major problem. With the true primal chaos formula and a solid foundation of basic skills, his endurance had always been extraordinary. Although this heretical God Force is not a martial skill, in terms of its actual combat efficiency, it is much stronger than any martial skill. Even if I can only cultivate it to the first stage, I can increase my strength and true essence force by 50%. If I used my foundation spear technique with this, and also coordinated my momentum, then if I met Xu Yang again I would easily be able to defeat him. And what is most abnormal is that this heretical God Force does not conflict with martial skills. If I opened this heretical God Force state, then I would still be able to use a martial skill, and the martial skill's power would be increase. Solely with this heretical God Force, there was value in me choosing this soul fragment. Excited, Lin Ming began to sift through the rest of the memories, even though there weren't many left. Although there were still many cultivation methods and martial skills left, there weren't any that were complete or that were suitable for a martial artist at the body transformation stage. Lin Ming didn't keep his hopes up that he would find something. But just as he was about to finish skimming through all the memories, Lin Ming's eyes brightened. Top movement ability, Golden Rock Shattering the Void. This movement skill originated from ancient times, when a mighty and powerful being of the realm of the gods happened upon a cataclysmic battle between a golden-winged rock and a true dragon. That golden-winged rock had a height of several tens of thousands of miles, and its wings were like endless hanging clouds that hid the sun, moon, and stars. That mighty and powerful being had bore witness to the entire battle between the golden-winged rock and the true dragon. Afterwards, the golden-winged rock had shattered the void, and disappeared out of sight. According to these images, that mighty one had retreated into meditation for 60 years, and finally created the movement ability known as Golden Rock Shattering the Void. To cultivate this set of movements, one had to start from the most basic stage of body transformation, and go step by step until they reached the highest level. After one reached the perfect stage of this ability, they could travel 1,000 miles in the blink of an eye, and roam through the endless void as if they were taking a leisurely stroll in the yard. To start practicing from the most basic body transformation stage was Lin Ming's good tidings. At his current stage, this was exactly the right time to start practicing Golden Rock Shattering the Void. However, it was a pity. The Golden Rock Shattering the Void movement ability was ultimately incomplete. The Golden Rock Shattering the Void consisted of 12 stages, but in the memories of the Elder's soul fragment, there were only 8 remaining. Losing 4 sections of the stages was by no means soul-crushing, as that mighty one originally didn't have the complete manual of the Golden Rock Shattering the Void movement ability. Otherwise, Lin Ming knew that the most precious secret skill would not be the heretical God Force, but the Golden Rock Shattering the Void. But still, Lin Ming did not feel any regret. Although it was incomplete, that wouldn't affect Lin Ming at the moment. Because his cultivation was too far off to even think about practicing those later stages, he would only need to wait until he reached that realm before looking again. After he obtained the Golden Rock Shattering the Void, Lin Ming kept looking through the few remaining memories. Lin Ming didn't think that he would find anything of value, but to his surprise there was actually a minor martial skill that he was able to practice. This martial skill was called the pulse-cutting palm. It did not require an extremely high cultivation, and it was also quite simple and easy to learn, but the corresponding power was not that high. Pulse-cutting palm would only be used when an opponent had consumed most of their true essence, and their strength was severely weakened. This was because in order to display the function of the pulse-cutting palm, one had to use a certain concealed energy to infiltrate true essence into an opponent's body using a special method. If the opponent's total remaining amount of true essence in their body was more than what was sent into their body, then that true essence would be consumed by the opponent. Just on this attribute alone, the pulse-cutting palm was far too tasteless. It could only be used to deal with a far weaker opponent, or someone that had already consumed too much of their strength and had lost the power to resist their enemy. But, it stood to reason that in order for that mighty elder to retain such a weak and cowardly martial skill, the pulse-cutting palm had to have a certain special function. This function was that the infiltrating true essence could cut off an enemy's meridians and dry up their acupuncture points. This kind of destructive damage was virtually irreparable. The only possible method was using certain special and exceedingly rare materials that were in the memories of the mighty elder. But these valuable materials were only found within the realm of the gods. After a martial artist reached the bone-forging stage, they would begin to open up the meridians. Once all of the meridians were opened, they would be connected to the pores of their body, and true essence would be able to access the meridians and flow through them unimpeded. This was the pulse condensation period. However, if one's meridians were severed, then it was impossible to step into the pulse condensation period for one's entire life. Not only that, but their cultivation would gradually reverse, becoming worse with each day, until it was completely lost. Even a man's virility was closely related to their meridians and acupuncture points. For instance, conditions such as impotency were closely related to the meridians that passed near the kidney. If these meridians and body points were ruined, then it would greatly affect a man's virility, and they might even become sterile as a result. Even martial artists above the pulse condensation period, whose body's meridians had been completely connected, would not be spared from the power of the pulse-cutting palm. Their cultivation would fall below the pulse condensation period, and suffer the same fate as anyone else. This pulse-cutting palm could only be described as extremely insidious and ruthless. Without a doubt, the special aim of this martial skill was to maliciously harm others, because when dealing with an enemy that had already lost all their strength to resist, killing them would be simple. But in using this pulse-cutting palm, it would utterly destroy their martial arts. And what was even more ruthless was that it would cause a man to lose all of their functions as a man. It was simply better to die than live in this pathetic state. This pulse-cutting palm is damaging enough. Although it cannot increase strength, it is an incomparably ruthless and sinister move to deal with others. Not only will it sever a person's meridians, it will also sever all their future descendants. To cause a martial artist to lose all their cultivation and their manhood, it is worse than killing them. If I have the time, then I'll study this. It will be useful for dealing with some enemies that I can't publicly go against. It will be much safer in the future if I ruin their martial arts. But for now, I don't have much time, so I'll put this on hold. Lin Ming completely sealed all the memories that he didn't need, and discarded all of the unnecessary life memories. After filtering everything, there was only the heretical god force, golden rock shattering the void, and the pulse-cutting palm. The special technique and movement ability were incomparably precious. As for the pulse-cutting palm, although it couldn't be considered so amazingly precious, it did have its own special role. Now there are only 4 months before Zhong Guanyu and I will fight each other. I was originally only going to draw the body inscription symbol and place it on my body, and continue perceiving the flow like silk state through meditation. With the enhanced true essence gathering of the body inscription symbol and the help of my ethereal martial intent for cultivating, I should be able to break through to the altering muscle stage before the battle. But now I also have to practice the golden rock shattering the void, and the heretical god force. Although this secret technique and movement ability are formidable, if I do not adequately practice them, then they will not enhance my cultivation and only be a waste of time. Only 4 months left. My time is too tight. Break into the 10,000 killing arrays top 10 in 3 months, defeat Zhong Guanyu in 4 months, defeat Ta Ku in 5 months, and defeat Lingsen in 6 months. Of these 4 tasks, entering into the top 10 ranks of the 10,000 killing array is the simplest. As long as I can rush through to the top 10 of the 10,000 killing array, the 7 Profound Martial House will award me a medium-grade human step long spear treasure, the Heavy Profound Soft Spear. This is a medium-grade human step treasure, and it is also the rarely seen elastic spear. If I have it, then my combat prowess will rise much higher, and my chances of defeating Zhong Guanyu will be that much better. Although Lin Ming currently had the penetrating rainbow spear on hand, it was still a half treasure after all. When concentrating his true essence into it, there was no smooth feeling. Chapter 124, Violent Wind Tunnel. Chapter 124, Violent Wind Tunnel. In the northwest reaches of Ju Mountain, there was a natural mountain valley. The entrance of the mountain valley faced the north, and spanned 1,000 feet. As it extended inwards, it became increasingly narrow. The entire mountain valley was in the shape of a funnel, and it continued into the hillside until the width was only about 10 feet or so. When gale winds blew from the north of Ju Mountain, they were blocked by Ju Mountain and formed a tremendous wind pressure and air current that flowed down the funnel-shaped valley. As it went inwards, and the mountain valley became narrower, the speed and pressure of the wind increased with each step. Before the 7 Profound Martial House was established, this mountain valley had been named Gale Valley. Inside the valley were large rolling stones that blew everywhere, and humans and livestock found it hard to stand firm. After the 7 Profound Martial House was established, the Xiantian masters, who had decided to use the local environments, set up a large array in this crazy wind valley. Not only did this raise the speed of the wind, but the wind current and direction became unpredictable. Undercurrents were everywhere, and there were even strong heavenly winds that could harm the body. This was one of the 7 major killing arrays of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and lightning. This was the Violent Wind Tunnel. The Violent Wind Tunnel was primarily used by martial artists to practice their stability and footwork. To a martial artist, solid footwork was the most basic, entry-level martial arts. To begin on the path of martial arts, one had to first practice their balance. Even Lin Ming, who had not received a formal martial arts education, had to begin by practicing the basic horse stance. However, Lin Ming came to the Violent Wind Tunnel today not to practice his stability, but to practice his movement abilities. To practice one's movement in the Violent Wind Tunnel was something that a common disciple would be unable to imagine. This was because no matter how fast one was, it was impossible to hide from the wind. No matter how astonishing one's speed, in the Violent Wind Tunnel, the person would always be pinned down and hindered by the fast wind. To practice one's movement, a disciple would usually choose the boulder slope array of the 7 major killing arrays. The boulder slope had innumerable rocks flying around. A martial artist would use these to practice their dodging skills and movement speed. Before, Lin Ming had gone to the boulder slope to take a look, and saw that the boulder slope truly was a good place to practice one's movement. However, it was not suited to the golden rock shattering the void. When one practiced movement in the boulder slope, the truth was that the main aspect a martial artist trained was their reaction speed, strength, and true essence body coordination. If these points were practiced well, a martial artist would simultaneously have extremely quick speed and nimble movements. However, it was hard to find a movement ability that could achieve both extreme speed and flexibility. For instance, Swan Feather Fall, Heaven Passing Ladder, Cloud Hanging Rope, and other such movement abilities stressed speed and light work above all. These skills were fastidious about keeping the body as light as a swallow. Once true essence was revolved, they could leap several dozens of feet high and easily catch a flying bird. This speed was very fast. But then there were movement abilities like 7-star Drifting Cloud, Lost Steps, 6-foot Step, and 7 Despairing Steps. These movement abilities stressed flexibility and dodging. For instance, in 7-star Drifting Cloud, one's feet traced the pattern of the Big Dipper, like treading on clouds, and their footwork was light like treading on clouds. After the large success stage was reached, one could take 7 steps at once, and it would be impossible to tell which step was first or last. Within these 7 steps, one's speed would be able to reach the extreme. These movements focused on dodging, They were very effective in close-range fights. If a movement ability had a superiority in one movement aspect, then it could be considered a top-grade manual. If a movement ability could be superior in both aspects, then that would be a best-grade manual. However, that kind of movement ability would only be passed down to the core disciples of the 7 profound valleys. But after Lin Ming read the general outline of Golden Rock Shattering the Void, he realized that even achieving the pinnacle in both of these aspects of movement was still quite ordinary. The truth zenith of movement abilities not only needed to achieve the summit of both of these aspects, but most importantly, they had to integrate the concept and law into its movements. To be able to integrate one kind of concept perfectly into one's movement was already considered extremely precious and rare, even in the realm of the gods. But that mighty elder's Golden Rock Shattering the Void actually managed to integrate 2 concepts, the concept of wind and the concept of void. The Golden Winged Rock was also known as the 9-day Leviathan Rock. It was a wind attribute god-beast that was the ancestor of 10,000 winds. The legends said that the Golden Winged Rock ate flood dragons as food, and its degree of formidability was similar to the true dragon and true phoenix. This wind attribute god-beast's concept of wind was undoubtedly the best. As for the concept of void, that was instantly comprehended by the mighty elder that had created the Golden Rock Shattering the Void when he had seen the Golden Winged Rock pierce through space and enter the limitless void. The concept of void was an extremely illusory ideal. At the moment, it was too far away from the current Lin Ming. He could only touch upon the concept of wind. And the best place to practice the concept of wind was of course the Violent Wind Tunnel. What? Junior apprentice Brother Lin would like to enter the 7th level of difficulty? The deacon senior apprentice brother who guarded the Violent Wind Tunnel stared at Lin Ming with wide eyes. He thought that he had misheard for a moment. The Violent Wind Tunnel was divided into 12 different sections, and the individual difficulties of each section could be adjusted. The 7th level was a difficulty that the Earth Hall disciples that were around rank 100 on the ranking stone would use. Now that Lin Ming had entered into the upper echelons of the heavenly abode, he should have started at the 10th level of difficulty. It had to be known that Zhu Yang had used the 10th level of difficulty to practice. The top 10 disciples of the heavenly abode often used the 11th level to practice. As for the highest 12th level, no one was actually able to withstand the raging winds inside. Even Ling Sen could only persist for an incense stick of time. If today Lin Ming had decided to enter into the 10th level of difficulty, or even the 11th, then the deacon would not have been so surprised. But what kind of existence was Lin Ming? He was a potential future core disciple who would challenge Ling Sen, Ta Ku, and Zhong Guanyu, and yet he had chosen the 7th level of difficulty. This really puzzled the deacon, so he asked, Junior apprentice Brother Lin, the 7th level of difficulty is usually used by the lower order disciples. Is Junior apprentice Brother Lin cracking a joke with me? Lin Ming smiled and said, I'm positive I want to open the 7th level, not a joke. All right. The deacon senior apprentice brother shrugged and opened the difficulty to the 7th level. After all, the time was his. It was his choice what difficulty he wanted to set. At lower difficulties he could also save true essence stones. After the path to the Violent Wind Tunnel opened, Lin Ming instantly entered. As soon as he entered the Violent Wind Tunnel, Lin Ming immediately heard the sound of roaring, rumbling winds as if there was thunder inside. Especially in nearby regions, there were some people who had opened the 10th level of difficulty and above. The fierce roar of that wind was like an army of 1,000 soldiers roaring as they charged forwards. Just by listening to that sound, one could imagine the horror inside. But Lin Ming was only at the 7th level of difficulty in the Violent Wind Tunnel, and it was a relatively calmer environment. With his cultivation, he could easily walk in the Violent Wind Tunnel. Lin Ming arrived at the middle area of the Violent Wind Tunnel. This far in, the wind speed was modest. He stopped, closed his eyes, and began to fully feel the bone-chilling cold mountain wind as it blew upon him. The word concept sounded vague and intangible. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, if a martial artist wanted to comprehend the concept of wind, he would not know where to start. What was the concept? It wasn't something that one could easily grasp. But after Lin Ming swallowed that soul fragment, he had attained a clear understanding of what a concept was. Of course, to comprehend it, one had to rely on oneself. The concept was in truth a law. It was a force of nature. Once it was comprehended, one could control a core of power. In the wide world, everything had its own inherent laws. For instance, water would flow to the lowest valley, fire would rise to the highest peak. Yin and yang supported and restrained each other, and life and death and so forth. These were the most basic of laws. Extend the law deep into the soul and control the origin of all things. This was what a concept meant. For Lin Ming to comprehend the concept of wind, he did not need to resist the wind, but to harmonize and conform to the wind, and feel the power of the it. If Lin Ming utilized his true essence, coupled with his formidable physical strength and the support of penetrating rainbow, he would easily be able to resist the 10th level of difficulty, and even challenge the 11th level of difficulty. However, these things held no significance for him. He had chosen the 7th level of difficulty. After coming to a complete stop, Lin Ming stopped resisting the force of the wind, and allowed his body to completely relax. Then, without any anxiety, he was sent flying by the fierce winds. Lin Ming continuously adjusted his body in the air, adapting to the wind and borrowing its strength. However, from the very beginning, he no way of crossing the threshold. Peng! Lin Ming heavily collided against the rocks. Even though his body was physically strong and he was protected by true essence, he still felt his dizzy as his blood surged inside him. Lin Ming stood up, integrated with the wind once more, and was once again thrown up by the wind, hitting the wall. He continued this experiment again and again, and hit the rocky wall again and again. Lin Ming had already lost count of how many times he had hit the wall. He suffered multiple bruises, and was covered with cuts and wounds. His face had multiple abrasions and his clothes were ripped to shreds. He was almost naked. It looked quite awful. Lin Ming had already informed Wang Yuhan that he would not be going to the Inscription Association today. In one breath he had made an appointment at the violent wind tunnel for 8 hours. He would use the entire time to feel the power and majesty of the wind. This was a completely masochistic method of cultivation. Even though Lin Ming had stocked up fully on medicines, he still ended up with such an embarrassing appearance. I really was negligent. I didn't think that my clothes would be ruined like this, and I didn't bring any spare clothes with me. Lin Ming forced a smile and shook his head. He prepared to ask the deacon's senior apprentice brother to fetch some clothes for him. At this point, it was approaching the afternoon. The deacon's senior apprentice brother was bored and in a very blasé mood as he sat in meditation. From time to time again he would pay attention to Lin Ming. Lin Ming had made an appointment for 8 hours, from morning until dusk. With such a long time, he had only opened the 7th level of difficulty. What was junior apprentice brother Lin thinking? Could he not handle a higher level? Or was he going inside to play? Playing around? No, that's impossible. Junior apprentice brother Lin simply doesn't have the personality of a 15-year-old boy. What is he doing in the violent wind tunnel? The deacon's senior apprentice brother thought about this for a long time and still did not understand, so he decided to forget about it. Those high-status people really give me a headache. Time in these 7 major killing arrays is just so precious. Many martial artists are reluctant to come even once every several days. Occasionally when they do come, they might even bring several companions with them, and each person would use half an hour. But then this junior apprentice brother Lin has 10 full days he can use every month, so he doesn't treasure such valuable time and made an appointment for 8 whole hours in one go. I can't believe he only opened the 7th level of difficulty. Even though we are both people, it still irritates me. Ah, so exasperating. The deacon's senior apprentice brother was sighing with emotion, when at this time, Lin Ming emerged from the violent wind tunnel and asked, "I'm sorry senior apprentice brother, but could you help prepare me a spare set of clothes?" At the moment, Lin Ming was in less than rags. He was almost naked. If he practiced any more, there would just be no way for him to go back to his cabin. As the deacon looked at Lin Ming, who had suddenly appeared in rags and his dirty body covered with countless wounds, the deacon's senior apprentice brother could only stare dumbfounded, his jaw dropping low enough that an egg could be stuffed inside. He didn't respond for a long time, until he finally recognized that this young dirty man with a beggar's appearance was Lin Ming. This. Chapter 125 Masochistic Cultivation. Chapter 125 Masochistic Cultivation. Chapter 125 Masochistic Cultivation. The deacon's senior apprentice brother was totally confused. Were there monsters inside of the violent wind tunnel? No, that was impossible. The violent wind tunnel was used daily. How would there be monsters inside? Or had he made a mistake with the difficulty level? He turned around and looked at the Array Formations panel board. It was indeed the 7th level of difficulty. But why would junior apprentice brother Lin's appearance be so shabby? What happened inside? Could it be that junior apprentice brother Lin's footwork technique was not steady? That was also impossible. He remembered on the martial stage that junior apprentice brother Lin had been steady like a towering mountain. It was impossible for there to be anything wrong with his footwork technique. In this case, Lin Ming simply couldn't explain. He said, "Senior apprentice brother, could I trouble you to reduce the difficulty by a level, and open up the 6th level of difficulty?" At the 7th level of difficulty, the wind velocity was just too fast. The time Lin Ming was airborne for was too short. Just as he was about to feel the origin of the wind, he would immediately smash into the wall. So he hoped to reduce the difficulty by a bit. To comprehend the concept of wind, he did not need to resist the strength of the wind. The force of the wind also did not matter. You want to reduce the difficulty? The deacon's senior apprentice brother was becoming a bit paranoid, but he hadn't figured out how to open his mouth and ask Lin Ming. Lin Ming once again entered the wind tunnel, and through numerous trials, he began to feel like he was starting to be able to sense the concept of wind. He wanted to use this opportunity to step into the threshold of the wind concept in one fell swoop. After his 8 hours of practice time had ended, Lin Ming had already hit the wall at least 10,000 times. If it wasn't for the top-quality injury medicine he had brought, the impact of so many hits would have already left him with several internal injuries. At this point, there wasn't a single spot on Lin Ming's body that wasn't bruised. When he swapped clothes and stepped out of the tunnel, the deacon's senior apprentice brother was completely confused. Standing by the deacon was a disciple of the heavenly abode. He didn't recognize Lin Ming in his current ragged condition. He only thought, which wonderful low-order disciple is this? You couldn't even think to open up a low level of difficulty. Was there a need to be so masochistic in your practice? Junior apprentice brother Lin, what in the world were you doing in there? The deacon's senior apprentice brother asked. Practicing. Lin Ming faintly smiled. Having given a perfunctory answer, he didn't wait for the deacon to ask him another question, and left. The disciple that was still waiting there asked, "Junior apprentice brother Lin? Which Lin?" "Lin Wu." "That's not right, although Lin Wu is a little weak, he's not that bad." The deacon sent an ill-humored look at the disciple and snappily said, "Junior apprentice brother Lin Ming." "Lin Ming. Haha, senior apprentice brother, your joke is too funny. If that Lin Ming can actually end up like that in that level of difficulty in the violent wind tunnel, then I'll walk in reverse from now on. You can walk however you want to. Next time if you don't believe then look yourself." The deacon's senior apprentice brother was disinclined to bother with the disciple. He began to close the formation array. It was about time for him to get off work. After Lin Ming returned to his cabin that night, he prepared a boiled bathtub full of medicinal herbs. As soon as he stripped his clothes, he jumped in and soaked inside the bathtub for 2 hours. The wounds on his body began to slowly mend themselves. As he sat in the tub and mediated for the night, by the next day his flesh had absorbed the potency of the medicinal herbs and his bruises had disappeared. The cost of that bathtub full of medicinal herbs was around 7,000 taels of gold. Before, the amount of gold that he had spent on raw materials would have been enough for him to practice for 7 or 8 years. But presently, that bathtub of medicine had already been completely used up. This caused Lin Ming to sigh with emotion. If one wanted to cultivate martial arts but didn't have money, then no matter what talent they had it would be useless. Yesterday, he had gone through 8 hours of masochistic practice. Lin Ming had finally touched upon the concept of wind, but still hadn't managed to cross the threshold. He was still far from being able to grasp that wind concept. With such an esoteric and profound golden rock shattering the void, Lin Ming hadn't expected to be able to cultivate it within a short time. Still, just practicing it a little was infinitely enjoyable. Today, Lin Ming did not go to the violent wind tunnel. He needed a period of time to let his body fully assimilate the experiences he had obtained yesterday. Therefore he lit a sound-transmitting talisman and passed a message to Wang Yuhan. Today, he would be going to the Inscription Association. In the past few days, a modest affair had happened in Sky Fortune City. The Zhu family had announced that because Zhu Yang had violated the family rules, his punishment was that he had been expelled from the family. Not only that, but the 10th prince, the Cloud Prince, had drawn a distinct line between him and Zhu Yang. This matter had been dealt with in a very low-profile manner. However, all the major powers had taken note of this event. Everyone knew that Zhu Yang and Lin Ming had a grudge between them, and some of the even more informed ones knew that this was related to Lan Yunyu. According to some reliable sources, Zhu Yang and Lin Ming were deep love rivals involved in a messy love triangle. They had many small battles, and their conflict became increasingly intense. At this point, the Zhu family had expelled Zhu Yang from their ranks, and the 10th prince had drawn a line with Zhu Yang. Just what was the meaning of this? Many people thought that the Zhu family and the 10th prince had done this in order to show a measure of goodwill towards Lin Ming. In order to woo Lin Ming to their side, they had directly expelled a talented person from their main family. But wasn't this just too crude and reckless? Although Lin Ming was amazingly strong, he was obviously close to the crown prince and on his side. If the 10th prince was unable to win over Lin Ming and had still expelled Zhu Yang, then wasn't this double penalty simply giving an enemy one's own wife as well as losing one's own soldiers? What was the reason behind the 10th prince's actions? After Lin Ming heard this news, he also felt it somewhat incomprehensible. Did the 10th prince make this decision in order to show goodwill? Was it necessary? Zhu Yang was expelled from the family and he also left the 7 profound martial house. I must be careful of him. He is living a gloomy life but he knows how to bear the suffering. This would greatly strengthen his toughness. Later, he will certainly try go against me somehow. My strength is growing and I am not afraid, but my parents are in Green Mulberry City. I must inform the Lin family about this and have my parents protected. Unfortunately, I did not kill him when I could on that stage, and now I've left a future trouble. A cold chill crept into Lin Ming's eyes. Although he had not bothered pursuing when Wang Yigao and Wang Yangfeng had tried dealing with him using cruel methods, but that did not mean he was a soft-hearted person, especially when faced with the possibility that something could endanger the safety of his loved ones. Thinking this, Lin Ming sent out a sound-transmitting talisman to Sky Fortune City's Lin family branch, exhorting them about his parents' situation. That afternoon, Lin Ming had decided to go to the Inscription Association, which was why he had made an appointment with Wang Yuhan. As he was walking down the road, Lin Ming suddenly stopped. He had run into a person. Lin Ming already had an impression of this person. He was a pulse condensation period martial artist who worked under the Crown Prince, Liao Wenyuan. The Crown Prince had helped Liao Wenyuan in his career and had shown him kindness. Before Liao Wenyuan had gained fame and fortune, a young Crown Prince had helped him. That stroke of graciousness and been unforgettably valuable. That was why even though Liao Wenyuan now had a title and a rapidly advancing career, he had still decided to enter into the turbid waters of the struggle over the throne, and was willing to assist the Crown Prince in ascending the throne. Mr. Lin. Liao Wenyuan cupped his fist in a polite greeting towards Lin Ming. Senior Liao is too polite. This junior should be the one bowing to Mr. Liao. Lin Ming cupped his fist and returned a courtesy bow towards Liao Wenyuan. Lin Ming didn't find it surprising that he met Liao Wenyuan here. These days, he had felt eyes on him as he walked down the streets, as if people were intentionally or unintentionally following him. But these people did not have any murderous or dangerous intent. They were obviously sent by the Crown Prince. Lin Ming's status was extremely sensitive. As soon as he took even one step out of the 7 profound martial house, there would be people immediately following him and protecting him in the shadows. It could be said that if the 10th prince wanted to kill him in Sky Fortune City, it wouldn't be much easier than killing the crown prince himself. The crown prince was apparently aware that he was often visiting the Inscription Association these days. Haha, I didn't think that Mr. Lin would know my name. To be truthful, I am a rather crude person and I'm not too comfortable with these courtesies. If you don't mind, I will be rude and call Mr. Lin, Brother Lin instead. Lin Ming smiled. Brother Liao's words are frank and straightforward. Truth be told, I also do not like etiquette and honorifics. Haha, that's great. Brother Lin, today I came to especially look for you. You may or may not know, but Zhu Yang has been expelled from the Zhu family. Liao Wenyuan had sent these words via True Essence sound transmission. Millimeter. Lin Ming nodded, and also changed to speaking with True Essence sound transmission. You must be careful of Zhu Yang. I know, but I also find something strange. Why was the Zhu family so ruthless? This ruthlessness is because of Brother Lin. You have a possibility of becoming a 7 profound envoy or the martial housemaster. With that status, whether it is the Zhu family or the 10th prince, they do not dare to annoy you. But to them, Zhu Yang will at most be a pulse condensation martial artist in the future. A pulse condensation period martial artist is an acceptable loss, so they drove him out. Later, Zhu Yang will hate you and try to assassinate you. If this happens, then Zhu Yang will take the blame and the Zhu family and the 10th prince will not be implicated. So it's like that. Well, when it comes to the internal struggles of the large families and royal powers, not even family will be spared. Lin Ming had no interest in things like the royal power struggle and large family interests. Yes, that's why since ancient times a ruler must be crafty, otherwise it would be impossible for them to accomplish anything. Liao Wenyuan paused and sighed. He was thinking of the humanity and righteousness of the crown prince, who unfortunately had insufficient determination. Ah, that's right, Brother Lin, you had previously asked His Highness the Crown Prince to look for some materials. We have already begun to search for them. However, there are some things that the Sky Fortune Kingdom does not have. The Crown Prince has already sent people to the neighboring countries to look. The Hualuo Nation's trade fair has things from all around. It should be possible to find some materials there. But to collect all the materials, it will take a long time. As for the matter of the manor that Brother Lin wishes to return, His Highness the Crown Prince has said that he has already gifted the land to Brother Lin. How could he take it back? Brother Lin, please feel relieved about that matter. Hualuo Nation was one of the larger countries under the governance of the 7 profound valleys. Regardless of military forces, or the number of masters they had, all of it surpassed the Sky Fortune Kingdom. Hualuo Nation's trade fair was famous and very well known within the surrounding area of 100,000 miles. It was only that it was too far from the Sky Fortune Kingdom. Even if one rode a snow dragon horse that could cross 2,000 miles in one day, it would still take a dozen or so days to arrive there. With the time it took to get to Hualuo Nation, coupled with the time it took to find the materials, and the fact that some materials couldn't necessarily be bought, it was wrong to depend solely on the Crown Prince to obtain the complete list of materials for the body inscription symbol. Lin Ming said with heartfelt appreciation, "Please thank the Crown Prince for me. I, Lin Ming, will always remember this favor." Haha, Brother Lin is far too polite. As soon as I ran into Brother Lin, I knew that Brother Lin was a man worth knowing. Rest assured, the Crown Prince has some savings that has accrued over the years. He can easily bear the burden of buying some materials. But the one who has a burden is really Brother Lin. Brother Lin not only has amazing martial arts skills, but also has a thorough understanding of inscription technique. This really makes anyone feel disbelief. Brother Lin, you really make me want to throw away what I thought the word genius meant. Chapter 126, Zhong Guanyu Moves. Chapter 126, Zhong Guanyu Moves. Lin Ming smiled and shook his head. Brother Liao flatters me. It is only because I have a fierce master that I have such achievements. That's right, since Zhu Yang has left Sky Fortune City, then what happened to Lan Yunyu? Did she leave with him? Although he already had nothing to do with Lan Yunyu, Lin Ming still inquired. Zhu Yang might have gone crazy by now, He might take out his anger on Lan Yunyu. Liao Wenyuan smiled and said, "Brother Lin, feel relieved that Lan Yunyu is all right. But she has already withdrawn herself from the Seven Profound Martial House. Presently she is still within Sky Fortune City. His Highness the Crown Prince has already sent some people to secretly protect her." "Oh." Lan Yunyu has left school. Lin Ming was a little stunned. The Crown Prince was really very thoughtful. He had even taken Lan Yunyu into account. There truly was a substantial advantage in joining a major power. There were a lot of matters that he didn't need to worry about. There were naturally people that would help manage them. Liao Wenyuan said, "That's about everything I have to say. I will walk first. Brother Lin, please continue whatever it was you were doing." Millimeter. "Thank you, Brother Liao. Haha, that's what I should be doing." As he bid farewell to Liao Wenyuan, Lin Ming continued to walk to the Inscription Association. In order to buy the materials he needed, it was actually a bad idea to only rely on the Crown Prince. He had to look for another way. If I can draw up an inscription symbol that even the Hutian martial artists of the Sky Fortune Kingdom will want, then I can have the Hutian martial artists help me look. That way, it would be possible to find the materials I need in a shorter period of time. This was the plan that Lin Ming had thought of before, and was the only means he could think of. With the improvement in Lin Ming's inscription technique, he might just be barely able to create an inscription symbol that would move the heart of a Hutian stage martial artist. But this method would draw a bit too much publicity. Inscription Association. "Mr. Lin," a pleasantly surprised Wang Yuhan said after seeing Lin Ming. She had already been waiting in the inscription room for some time. "Miss Wang, I'm very embarrassed. There was a small matter, so I was delayed." Because he had entered into space within the magic cube, Lin Ming's soul force consumption was extremely fierce that night, and he didn't wake up early like he usually did. Then after that he went to the violent wind tunnel to practice, and time had dragged on a bit too long. "There are already quite a few visitors waiting," Wang Yuhan said as she pointed towards the hall. Lin Ming looked. In the hall, there were already 7 or 8 people who were patiently waiting there. Usually at this time, there would only be 2 or 3 people. The last time, Lin Ming had repeatedly gone through requests. No matter whether it was repairing an inscription symbol or drawing one up, he managed to smoothly complete the task each time. And what was most pleasantly surprising to the martial artists was that the inscription symbols Lin Ming had drawn up had a much better effect than a normal inscription master. Usually to achieve this effect, only a few of the top inscription masters of Sky Fortune Kingdom, like Wang Xuanji, were able to do so. But what kind of character was Wang Xuanji? Most people simply could not move him. Even if they wanted him to, his price was not something that most martial artists could afford to pay. But Lin Ming's price for work was very cheap. His service wasn't actually much worse compared to those top-level inscription masters. As a result, many visitors had come because they had learned this. "I heard that the guest inscription master is in his teens. I don't know whether this rumor is true though," a visitor thoughtlessly said. Today he had brought a medium-grade human step treasure. He had already had this treasure for over half a year, but hadn't found an appropriate inscription symbol. He did not even bother glancing at common inscription symbols, but the price for the top-tier inscription symbols were just too high and not to his liking. He cultivated cold attribute true essence, and therefore wanted an inscription symbol that matched his true essence attribute. And then yesterday, he had overheard that a new guest inscription master had come to the Inscription Association and drawn up an Ice Frost Guard inscription symbol. After being placed on, the armor had actually changed to an icy blue color. That was why before the dawn had even risen, he had lined up here and had already waited most of the day till now. However, he wasn't even the slightest bit impatient. The earlier he came, the earlier in line he would be, and he might be the first one that the inscription master helped. The first inscription symbol that an inscription master made was the best. This was because at that time their soul force and true essence were at their most abundant state, and it was also easier to obtain the best result. As the day dragged on, the chances of getting the best possible result would decrease. It's true, when my friend came, he saw with his own eyes that the inscription master was just a youth. What's wrong with the world? Is inscription technique not difficult to learn? He's already at this level. In a few years him surpassing Wang Xuanji would be as simple as eating a meal or drinking water. The children these days are becoming increasingly fierce. A few years ago there was Qin Xingxuan, and half a month ago there was a Lin Ming. Now, there's also an inscription genius. Where did this boy come from? Why have I never heard of him before? He shouldn't be someone from the Sky Fortune Kingdom. Our Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription technique isn't that amazing. In certain places in the mainland, there are families who engage in special occupations. For instance, array master families, alchemist families, inscription master families, refiner families, and so forth. These families have already inherited legacies of over 1,000 years, and they are much more formidable than the Sky Fortune Kingdom. They would screen the soul talent of each generation's outstanding descendants, and have a pair of a high-talent male and female marry. The child they give birth to would have the possibility of having a high-grade soul talent. Gradually, in these families, even having a 5th-grade soul talent isn't strange. In addition to their glorious and long history and the many inheritances and legacies that they have accumulated, their level of inscription technique must be many times more formidable than the average inscription master. A knowledgeable old man slowly said this as he stroked his beard. The truth was that nothing he said was a secret. Not only were there families with particular professions, but martial arts were the same. There were martial arts families with grandiose histories that had existed since ancient times. For instance, of the 7 profound marital house's current core disciples, besides Qin Xingxuan, the rest had come from martial cultivation families. Lin Ming was thought to be such a person by them. As the group of people was talking, a young receptionist lady came over, and politely told them, "The guest inscription master has arrived. Everyone has been waiting for a long time. We may begin now." Allied Trade Association, Sky Fortune City Headquarters. In a luxurious room in the midst of a renovation, Zhong Guanyu reclined on a bed. In his hand he held a delicate eggshell-like porcelain bowl that was threaded with fine gold slivers. In the small golden bowl was a creamy liquid. This thick and fragrant liquid was milk. But it was not goat's milk or sheep's milk or something like that, but was a woman's breast milk. In most nobles' mansions, they raised a number of wet nurses. These wet nurses would squeeze out their breast milk and the nobles would enjoy this delicacy. Human breast milk was considered to be the most nutritious of all milks. Whether a baby grew well had much to do with breast milk, and how long they were on breast milk before they were weaned off. Because of this, it was popular within the aristocrats of Sky Fortune Kingdom to raise wet nurses in their mansions. Normally, the women that had the occupation of a wet nurse were those that had just had a child, or their child had died, or they were sold off. Most of these women came from the countryside, and usually only the women with poor appearances would come and be a wet nurse to help out with their family's expenses. The saying was that a woman with big buttocks would easily give birth. Therefore, the women that were able to squeeze enough breast milk were usually somewhat plump. In addition, they had mostly been doing farm work in the countryside since they were children. Their skin had already been thoroughly exposed to sun and rain, and was rough. Most were not attractive. Zhong Guanyu, this person, had very loose lips. He felt that this kind of woman wet nurse seriously affected his appetite. Therefore the wet nurses he raised had to be pretty and beautiful women beyond all else. These kinds of beauty were usually the concubines of other wealthy individuals. Their age was usually 20 or so, and their looks were charming and pleasant. The Allied Trade Association had a huge influence. Some respected families would offer their concubines on their own volition in order to flatter Zhong Guanyu. But there were also some that were compelled by Zhong Guanyu. In those cases the families would have to obediently offer up their concubines. As for the children that these concubines had given birth to, the families could only have their own wet nurses replace them. Some concubines were in delicate health, and their breast milk was scarce. However, this didn't matter to Zhong Guanyu. In fact, Zhong Guanyu liked this kind. He felt that such breast milk was the sweetest, as well as the most rare and precious. Sometimes, a concubine that Zhong Guanyu had an appetite for would be directly sent to his harem. Zhong Guanyu had an interest in all the various flavors of beautiful women, even a person's wife was no exception. "Have you found her?" Zhong Guanyu lazily asked, slowly sipping on his bowl of breast milk. Informing the young master, "We have found her." The one speaking was a middle-aged man of over 40 years old. His breath was long and his heartbeat was powerful. He was at the viscera training stage. "Millimeter. We shall go," Zhong Guanyu said and tossed down the rest of the breast milk in the bowl. He excitedly licked his lips, his appearance quite fierce at this moment. "Young master, to do this, is..." The middle-aged man hesitated. "Millimeter? Are you afraid to offend Lin Ming?" "Young master, Lin Ming has already risen to a core disciple status within the Seven Profound Martial House. If he continues to rise in the future, and becomes a Seven Profound Envoy or the Martial Housemaster, if we have offended such a person, it would be very difficult to manage. Your meaning is, I should lie down with both hands tied, and let him step on me, and even befriend Lin Ming? Is that right?" Zhong Guanyu's voice suddenly cooled. The middle-aged man hurriedly said, "Young master, this subordinate does not mean that. Humph. The Seven Profound Martial House has pushed me to stand against Lin Ming. It is impossible for me to live in peace with him. Do you want me to admit defeat? Even if I admit defeat, do you think Lin Ming will receive my kindness? The Seven Profound Martial House wants me to be Lin Ming's stepping stone, but what they do not know is I am not a stepping stone. I am a caltrop. Whoever steps on me will die." Zhong Guanyu's heart of martial arts was an arrogant heart. He could understand that some people were stronger than him from the start, but he could not bear to see a young man compared to him, and chase after him and then surpass him. Not only that, but Lin Ming was younger than him by 5 years. Because Lin Ming had stolen his thunder, he had already become extremely unhappy. Not only that, but the fight in 4 months would definitely attract the attention of everyone within the Sky Fortune Kingdom. If he lost in that situation, it would be a shameful disgrace. Zhong Guanyu's arrogant heart could not accept such a matter. The truth was, Zhong Guanyu had complete confidence in winning the match 4 months from now. But even if he won, he felt that Lin Ming would eventually surpass him. At that time, Lin Ming would challenge him again to defeat him. In this way, the result would still be the same. Zhong Guanyu had a premonition that once he was defeated by Lin Ming someday, then he would forever be surpassed by Lin Ming, and would be unable to stand up from this catastrophic failure. This would frustrate his arrogant heart. This knot, he would never be able to untie. And that was because he could never surmount Lin Ming again. Zhong Guanyu absolutely did not want to see that ever happen. Chapter 127 Despicable Means. Chapter 127 Despicable Means. Chapter 127 Despicable Means. After having cultivated the divine acacia power, Zhong Guanyu's heart had a strong wish. That wish was to cultivate the divine acacia power to the peak of the 7th layer, and achieve a long period of youth, the time where his young essence would never fade. Once he achieved this boundary, he would have several hundred years of youth. He would be able to play with all the various beautiful and worldly women in society, take them, and plunder them. From the beauties of today to the beauties of several hundred years later, he would establish a massive harem that surpassed the royal family's harem of 3,000 beautiful women. Every day he would go visit his personal harem and wantonly engage in reckless fun with them. Thinking of this, Zhong Guanyu would be filled with burning desire, and his blood would bubble to the brim with a maddeningly ecstatic excitement. But with Zhong Guanyu's talent, to cultivate the divine acacia power to the peak 7th layer was easier said than done. He had just begun cultivating the divine acacia power. If everything went smoothly, and he picked the best beautiful women to cultivate from, there was a small possibility that he would be able to reach the peak of the 7th layer. But if 4 months from now, he was defeated by Lin Ming in front of the eyes of everyone, then his spirit and heart would be suppressed and his young essence would not flow smoothly. In that case, it would be very difficult to reach the peak of the 7th layer. So, Zhong Guanyu decided to completely and thoroughly defeat Lin Ming in the match 4 months from now. He would mercilessly trample over him so that he would never be able to stand up from his failure in his entire life. He would snatch everything from him, all the halos that surrounded him and all the beautiful women that admired him. His heart would be serene, his young essence would flow unimpeded, and his cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. That middle-aged man said, "Young master, this subordinate is too dull-minded." But this subordinate only thinks that if you do such things, it will enrage Lin Ming. When the time comes, it will only deepen the animosity of an enemy. Humph. So what if I enrage him? You think I am going to admit defeat without a fight? But. No buts. Lin Ming is scary, yes, and the 10th prince does not dare to move against him. I have to respect the crown prince, but this does not mean that I must be servile to him. If others rode on your head, would you also lie on the floor and act like a dog? Since this Lin Ming wants to defeat me, then I will eliminate him. Young master is ready. The middle-aged man did not understand what his upcoming plans and defeating Lin Ming had in common. I ask you, what is most fearful about Lin Ming? The middle-aged man thought for a moment and said, his perception, martial intent, and heart of martial arts. Yes, but the most fundamental of all these is his heart of martial arts. As long as I can break his heart of martial arts, then he will lose his martial intent. If he does not have his martial intent, then he will just be some garbage third-grade talent. Even if he has monstrous heaven-defying perception, his cultivation will be limited to below the pulse condensation period. What sort of achievements could he possibly have? As long as he doesn't become stronger, his halo will gradually disappear until everyone has forgotten about him. At that time, he will be nothing to but an ant. I'll crush him to death with a single step. He is under the protection of the 7 profound martial house now. It is impossible for me to publicly deal with him. I can only break his heart of martial arts. To deal with Lin Ming, it must be before he grows. Zhong Guanyu devilishly grinned, revealing a trace of his teeth. But that middle-aged man only felt sorrow in his heart. If he could defeat Lin Ming's heart, then that was of course good, but what if he failed? Then they would have seriously offended Lin Ming, and that might possibly affect the young master's future status in the Allied Trade Association. The Allied Trade Association would never appoint a successor that had offended a 7 profound envoy or the martial housemaster. However, Zhong Guanyu was paranoid by nature, and he practiced the divine acacia power which strengthened his possessive instincts. How would he listen to his words? Many cultivation methods could affect a person's mind. For instance, cultivating the abiding Buddha mantra could cause one's thoughts to be stable and pure in heart. The golden bone forging divine formula would cause a person's qi and blood to be filled with yang energy and become indomitable. However, what the divine acacia formula did was cause a person's possessive instincts to grow stronger and stronger, and their thoughts would be increasingly extreme and violent. Young master, perhaps we should discuss this matter with the master. Millimeter. Zhong Guanyu's complexion immediately went cold, and he emitted a faint murderous intent. The middle-aged man jumped in fear, hurriedly saying, "This subordinate should die, this subordinate should die. Too much talk leads to error. All you have to do is your duty as a servant." Zhong Guanyu withdrew his murderous aura. This so-called master was naturally Zhong Guanyu's father. Zhong Guanyu knew that if this matter was known by his father, he would absolutely not be allowed to do so. Because in the eyes of his father, the Allied Trade Association's future was far more important than Zhong Guanyu's future martial arts cultivation. His father would never run the risk of offending Lin Ming and going up against him. In his opinion, in the worst-case scenario, Zhong Guanyu would lose and that would be it. But as for Zhong Guanyu, no matter how large the influence of the Allied Trade Association was, it was impossible for them to give him several hundred years of youth and never-ending yang essence. Only strength would bring him this. As long as he had strength, all the worldly possessions of the Allied Trade Association were nothing but floating cloud. Geniuses were confident. Lin Ming was confident and Zhong Guanyu was similarly confident. A truly proud talent would never recognize from the beginning that they were inferior to others. Otherwise, his heart would be blocked, and Zhong Guanyu would be more paranoid. Geniuses always thought that they were the protagonists of the world's future, and so they would fight. However, these fights must have casualties. Sky Fortune City, southwestern suburb. The Sky Fortune City Royal Palace faced south. The northern end of town was where most of the mansions of the nobility were, and it was a relatively prosperous location. The south of the city was deserted, especially near the suburbs, where it was quite deserted. In the southwest suburb, there were some low-rise houses. Although these houses had been here for years, they did not look old. It was just that under the rain, the dull grey tiles, blank white walls, and the shading from the trees did not have a fresh feeling. In the midst of all these houses, there was a new shop. The shop's original owner had returned to the countryside to retire, and had put his shop on sale. After the new owner took over, the shop doors were painted with fresh new tung oil, and the inside was spotlessly cleaned. There were even some flowers and plants that were placed around. It looked much more elegant. At this time, in the shop entrance, there was a young girl wearing a simple blue cotton dress. She was quite beautiful, with supple, tender skin. She gave off fresh and crisp feeling. She was fiddling with some cloths on the shelves. This girl seemed to be in delicate health, and the cloth she was moving appeared extremely cumbersome. However, the girl's skill was actually high, and she stacked the large and small fabrics neatly. This girl was Lan Yunyu. Because her engagement contract had become invalid, Lan Yunyu had left the Seven Profound Martial House. She had helplessly walked through Sky Fortune City for an entire day. She was too ashamed to return home, and she did not know where to go or what to do. In the end, she decided to set her foot down in Sky Fortune City. Therefore, she pawned some of her jewelry, and opened up this small fabric shop. All of the neighbors ridiculously loved this new young girl. The girl wore simple blue clothes every day, and she was always busy at work in her small fabric shop. Such a delicate and juicy young girl that was actually willing to endure such hardship was rare. Not only that, but this girl's hands and feet were deft, her strength was great, and she also cooked a good meal. It stood to reason that such a girl that had endured this hardship since childhood would have rough skin, and both her hands should at least have callus, but they actually didn't think that both of this girl's hands would be soft and creamy like liquid jade. It was simply amazing. What kind of girl was this? After knowing that this girl was one person alone by herself, many of neighborhood aunts' hearts were aroused with overwhelming sympathy. They curiously asked about the girl's life experiences, but the girl always ambiguously answered in vague terms. Some of these aunts even wanted to act as a matchmaker for this beautiful young girl, but to these offers, the girl always faintly smiled and refused. "Young master, we're here." The middle-aged man pointed to a sign hanging over a fabric shop. That sign hadn't been hanging there for a long time. "Ha! What an elegant shop. Good." Zhong Guanyu shook the fan in his hands, and his face revealed a pondering smile as if was looking at a delicious prey. In order to break Lin Ming's heart of martial arts, he had to find the flaw in Lin Ming's heart of martial arts. To Zhong Guanyu, it seemed the only flaw in Lin Ming's heart of martial arts was Lan Yunyu. When Lin Ming had spent half an incense stick of time to overcome the pass of desire, that person in the dream realm must have been Lan Yunyu. Although Lan Yunyu's matter had already passed, Zhong Guanyu still believed that Lan Yunyu was a knot in Lin Ming's heart. If he could take Lan Yunyu and cultivate his divine acacia power with her, what would be the outcome once Lin Ming found out? Zhong Guanyu very much wanted to know. In a matter like a duel, if one was defeated, they would be fine to fight a second time. There would not be a situation where their spirit would be suppressed and blocked. But a girl was different. As long as he got her in his bed, that was a forever matter. Zhong Guanyu believed that even though Lan Yunyu betrayed Lin Ming, she still had a place within his heart. If he took Lan Yunyu, then this would forever be a thorn in his mind. This thorn would be something he could never ever erase. Even if Lin Ming defeated him, that thorn would still remain. If one's spirit wasn't smooth, then their thoughts would be clouded and their cultivation would be blocked. When Lin Ming tried to break through a bottleneck of his martial arts cultivation, this would be a demon of his heart that stopped him. And the key to this was, could Lin Ming defeat him? It was true that the Seven Profound Martial House protected Lin Ming. But they did not protect Lan Yunyu, and this girl had already withdrawn from the Seven Profound Martial House. If Lin Ming knew that he had obtained Lan Yunyu for himself, would he rush towards him, head full of anger, and ask him to a duel? If Lin Ming came to his front door, that would simply be too good. At this moment, Zhong Guanyu had a 100% assurance that he could defeat Lin Ming. Even if he waited 4 months, he still had 90% assurance that he would win against Lin Ming. This was because recently, His divine acacia power had reached the large success stage of the first layer, and his strength had grown by a large margin. This was something that Lin Ming did not know. Zhong Guanyu expected that on the day of that decisive battle, Lin Ming, because of anger, would ruthlessly attack him, with each move desperately aggressive. In Zhong Guanyu's imagined scenario, that would be perfect. He would be perfectly justified to use some of the sinister and sadistic styles of the divine acacia power, and leave Lin Ming to suffer with irreversibly severe injuries that would seriously impact his future cultivation. Even if he could not reach that point, he could still make it so that Lin Ming would be confined to bed for at least half a year. If Lin Ming had to recuperate in bed for half a year, then what would happen? Could he still pass the 7 Profound Valleys Core Disciple test? The test's deadline was in little more than a year. This was his only chance. As long as Lin Ming did not pass the test, in Zhong Guanyu's eyes he had nothing to fear. In addition to his future achievements and the disparity in their influence, Zhong Guanyu had full confidence that he could suppress Lin Ming for a lifetime. Chapter 128 Liao Wenyuan. Chapter 128 Liao Wenyuan. First, he would snatch the jade virginity of the woman that Lin Ming had loved and use her to enhance his own cultivation. Then on the stage in front of the eyes of everyone, Lin Ming would be defeated by the man who had stolen his woman, and also experience a severe wound that would take half a year to heal from. This would cause him to fail the 7 Profound Martial House Core Disciple tests. With so many attacks concentrated together, what would happen to Lin Ming? Would he ever be able to calm down his spirit? Would he be able to maintain his perfect heart of martial arts? Zhong Guanyu self-reflected. If he was placed in that situation, he would be wild with rage, and his spirit would be disrupted. If his spirit couldn't flow well, then one's cultivation would be hindered. Since ancient times, the frustrated geniuses everywhere that had never recovered from a setback all had one common characteristic. This was that before it had happened, everything had been smooth sailing, and then they would suddenly suffer a disastrous defeat. You think your future prospects are limitless, but these are all things given to you by your martial intent. If I take away your martial intent, then you will be nothing. Wait for me to plunder the virginity of the woman you once loved, shatter your martial intent, grievously wound you, and waste your future. Thinking of Lin Ming's inevitable fate, Zhong Guanyu really wanted to let out a hearty laugh. He looked again at Lan Yunyu in her small fabric shop, and the corners of his mouth flashed with a ferocious macabre smile. He lifted his foot and walked forwards her. "Hello, 2 customers, are you looking to purchase something?" Lan Yunyu sweetly greeted with a smile as she saw the 2 silk-robed men walk into the shop. Although she and Zhong Guanyu had both attended the 7 Profound Martial House at the same time, Zhong Guanyu rarely appeared in front of others, so Lan Yunyu did not recognize him. But as they approached Lan Yunyu, her eyes gradually sharpened. The silk-robed man who was waving a fan was not some common or trivial person. Not even mentioning the richly brocaded silk fabrics he was wearing, but the jade pendant that he was wearing at his waist was worth no less than 5,000 gold taels. It was a top-quality white translucent jade pendant. Not only that, but it had delicate red veins within. It was a very beautiful blood jade. She remembered that not even Zhu Yang had such a high-quality jade pendant. To so casually wear a jade pendant that was equal to 1 or 2 treasures on his body, the young man's family background was simply too terrifying. Lan Yunyu could not see through this young man's cultivation, but she could easily see that the middle-aged man accompanying him was at the Viscera training stage. To have a follower at the Viscera training stage, just who was this man? But the key was, why would the son of such a wealthy person come to such a small hole-in-the-wall shop to buy fabric? Although her fabric was decent, it was not something that this young man would ever deem worthy to be glanced at. This kind of person from a wealthy family probably used precious snow silk as his fabric. Also, those who bought fabrics were usually women. What would 2 men possibly be buying fabric for? Lan Yunue's mind flashed with all these thoughts, and in her heart she became secretly alert. Zhong Guanyu looked at Lan Yunyu and revealed a faint smile. He joyously laughed and thought, what a charming and juicy young beauty. Even though she's wearing coarse homespun clothing, it doesn't hide her exquisite makings. No wonder Lin Ming and Zhu Yang were both infatuated with this girl. Moreover, I can tell that this girl truly has the body of a virgin. This is perfect. I'll settle her within my manor and thoroughly cultivate my divine acacia power with her. I will certainly enjoy this. In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, according to customs, a man and woman wouldn't have sexual relations with each other before marriage. Certainly, this logic did not apply to concubines and maids because one did not need to marry them. Are you Miss Lan? Zhong Guanyu asked straight to the point. Lan Yunyue's heart chilled. Sure enough, they were looking for her. Since they've come to her door, they have already verified her identity. She nodded and said, "Yes, I am. What matter do you two have with me?" Haha, I've seen Miss Lan before. The truth is, the first time that I saw Miss Lan, I was already attracted to Miss Lan. Whether it is appearance or temperament, Miss Lan is truly very charming. Lan Yunyu unconsciously stepped back half a step, opening up a distance between her and Zhong Guanyu. The wariness in her heart became heavier. Zhong Guanyu saw Lan Yunyu step back, and also quickly stepped back himself to show respect. He said, "My apologies, I hope that I was not too offensive and therefore scared Miss Lan. I do not have any other meaning, honestly, I just want to say that I very much admire Miss Lan, but before, Miss Lan was already engaged. My only regret is that I did not meet Miss Lan sooner. I recently heard that Miss Lan has broken her engagement, so I took the liberty to visit. I hope that Miss Lan is not offended by my brashness." Lan Yunyu saw Zhong Guanyu's respect and felt a little more at ease. She calmly replied, "My engagement was not broken, but divorced." Haha, Miss Lan is too serious. I actually already knew that Zhu Yang had been expelled from the Zhu family. How could he possibly be worthy of Miss Lan? I do not know why Miss Lan decided to open such a small fabric shop in this remote area. If Miss Lan does not mind, how about coming over to my house for a visit? I have some gifts that I must give to Miss Lan. Lan Yunyue's heart began to race. This young man in front of her, his words were appropriate, his smile was gentle, and by all appearances he was a modest and classy gentleman that didn't give off any ill feelings. However, Lan Yunyu suddenly felt that there was something wrong about him. Lan Yunyu knew how sensitive her status was. She was Lin Ming's former girlfriend. Just on this point alone, even if there was a son of a rich family who had taken a liking to her, they wouldn't be so crazy as to come here and try to take advantage of her. Although Lan Yunyu knew that Lin Ming no longer had any relationship with her, those nobles would not think such a thing. This was something that they would never dare to do. In their opinion, this was the same as insulting Lin Ming. But this young man actually dared to be so flagrantly blatant to court her. There were only two possible meanings to this. He was completely crazy, or he was completely opposed to Lin Ming, or even had a grudge with him. Thinking of this, Lan Yunyu had a very bad feeling, like an unlucky premonition that was slowly creeping up behind her, that someone would try to kidnap her and use her to threaten Lin Ming. Although she could not see through this young man's cultivation, she knew without a doubt that she was not his match. In addition to that old servant that stood behind him, she had no chance of escaping. Zhong Guanyu saw Lan Yunyu tense up and go on high alert, smiled, and said, "I heard that Miss Lan has already withdrawn from the 7 Profound Martial House. It's really too bad. With Miss Lan's talent, with good pills supporting, it would be possible to break through to the pulse condensation period. Once someone breaks through to the pulse condensation period, their youth will be lengthened by decades. Isn't this something that Miss Lan desires?" Zhong Guanyu lightly coughed, and the middle-aged man immediately handed him a box. He opened it. There were 2 bottles of pills inside. Zhong Guanyu casually took out a bottle and opened it. The rich and fragrant aroma of high-quality medicines immediately wafted out. These were clearly top-quality medicines. Zhong Guanyu smiled and handed the pills to Lan Yunyu. He said, "These are high-grade soul-gathering pellets, just a trivial little gift not worth mentioning. Miss Lan, please do not reject them. These are only a small gift that I prepared for our first meeting. In the future, I can give you anything you want. With my status, I will not bring disgrace to you. How about it?" Zhong Guanyu knew of Lan Yunyue's past. He knew what Lan Yunyu desired, and had always wanted. She was divorced now. It was impossible for her to remarry into any respectable family. He did not believe that if he appeared in front of her when she was in such a dire situation and offered so many pills, and even offered to help her break through to the pulse condensation period, that Lan Yunyu would not be tempted by this. However, he hadn't expected that Lan Yunyu would simply not take the bottle of pills. She refused them, and directly said, "This young lady understands and thanks good sir for his kind intentions, but must decline. I no longer wish to cultivate the path of martial arts, and would like to live out the rest of my days as an ordinary person. I thank good sir for his kind regards, and ask that good sir please never return." "Oh, is that so?" Zhong Guanyu's smiling visage slowly fell, and an imposing aura from his body slowly began to grow. The middle-aged man behind him stepped forward, blocking the rear door. Lan Yunyu immediately became flustered, and her pretty face began to pale. What do you want to do?" Zhong Guanyu said, "It's a pity that Miss Lan does not seem very interested in returning to my home, but I think that as long as I bring you there, I can make you change your mind by fulfilling your interest of sex." As Lan Yunyu heard Zhong Guanyu bite out this word sex, she immediately turned ice cold. This person, he dares to rape her. He was insane. Was he completely ignoring the threat of Lin Ming and abducting her to his own house? Was he not afraid of Lin Ming's retaliation? Lan Yunyu knew that even if she no longer had any relationship with Lin Ming, if some person was to rape her, Lin Ming would absolutely never let that person off. Lan Yunyu's back was already soaked in cold sweat. Her eyes glanced at the booth, and she saw not a trace of the scissors she used to cut fabric with. Haha, such a young girl and also so beautiful. Don't take things too hard, look at the bright side. Zhong Guanyu's smiling face became all the more intense. Zhong Guanyu took a step forward. He revolved a bit of his true essence, and was just about to make a move, when at this moment a hearty laughter suddenly came from the entrance. "Haha, is that not Sir Zhong? Sky Fortune City is such a small place, I can't believe that I would bump into you here." Zhong Guanyu frowned and he turned around. He was surprised to see a man with thick eyebrows smiling at him as he walked over. With every step this man took, he was emitting a strong aura that suppressed him. Liao Wenyuan. Zhong Guanyu recognized this person. He was a pulse condensation period master who was a subordinate of the Crown Prince. Not only that, but he was already at the middle pulse condensation period. Even if there were 4 of 5 or him, he still wouldn't be this man's match. The Crown Prince actually sent Liao Wenyuan to protect Lan Yunyu? No, that's not right. It should be that there was someone following her, and as soon as this shadowy saw that he had come, had used a sound-transmitting talisman to immediately notify Liao Wenyuan. With a pulse condensation period master's speed, catching up so quickly was not a problem. Damn. Mr. Liao. What a fortunate meeting, Zhong Guanyu said as he cupped his hands together in greeting. Fortunate meeting, fortunate meeting. Liao Wenyuan clasped his hands together and returned the courtesy. He calmly asked, "Is Sir Zhong also here to buy fabric?" "Oh, it's for the beginning of winter. My family wishes to purchase a batch of winter clothing. Haha, I also have this plan for the coming winter. I came early, but didn't think that I would meet Sir Zhong also choosing out fabric. This is such a fortunate coincidence. How about Sir Zhong chooses fabric with me?" Hee, Zhong Guanyu suddenly smiled, but his smiling face contained a faint trace of murderous intention. He coldly said, "Do not trouble yourself, Mr. Liao. Mr. Liao should feel free to choose his own fabric. When the winter comes this year, it will be best if you do not freeze to death." After Zhong Guanyu said this, he waved the fan in his hands, flicked his sleeves, and left the shop. Hearing Zhong Guanyu's apparent threat before he left, Liao Wenyuan only smiled and yawned. He was a pulse condensation period master, and did not fear the Allied Trade Association. He was also a subordinate of the Crown Prince. What could Zhong Guanyu possibly do to him? Chapter 129, Medium-Grade Human Step Sword. Chapter 129, Medium-Grade Human Step Sword. It was only when she could no longer sense Zhong Guanyu that Lan Yunyu let out a breath of relief, her fingers trembling. A moment ago, did that man say Sir Zhong? Was it possible that the youth was Zhong Guanyu? Although she no longer kept thoughts of Lin Ming in her mind, Lan Yunyu had still unintentionally heard news of Lin Ming. She knew that 4 months from now, Lin Ming would challenge Zhong Guanyu. Was it because of this reason that Zhong Guanyu had wanted to do something so ruthless to her? But it was nothing more than a challenge, so why would he do this? Lan Yunyu didn't understand. It was not only Lan Yunyu who didn't understand. It had never even occurred to Lin Ming that Zhong Guanyu would be demented to such a degree that this person wished to obtain everything in the world. Glory, status, woman, all were his, and anyone who threatened to encroach on these would be a thorn in his side. Any normal person, such as the 10th prince, even if they regarded Lin Ming as a thorn in their side, they would never dare to move against them. They would outwardly smile and show goodwill. But Zhong Guanyu was different. Anyone that threatened him would receive his mad retaliation. "Miss Lan, are you all right?" Liao Wenyuan smiled. Although he knew Lan Yunyu and Lin Ming's past, he did not look down on this girl. In this world, there were 2 kinds of companions that were worth feeling grateful for. The first was a woman. When everything went downhill, they would still stand by their man and cross the hard times with their husband. The second was a successful man with a rising career who would cross life together with just his first wife. Running into these 2 kinds of companions would be one of life's great fortunes. But, if one cannot meet someone like this, then no one can be blamed either. Thank you, Senior. May I ask Senior's name?" Lan Yunyu bit her lip and bowed. Without a doubt, this intimidating man with thick eyebrows had come to protect her. To be a martial arts master that would protect an ordinary female, he must have some sort of relation to Lin Ming. "Miss Lan does not need to be polite. My surname is Liao, my name is Liao Wenyuan. Just call me Mr. Liao." Senior Liao's graciousness, this young lady will never forget. "Haha, you don't need to thank me. I was just doing as I was instructed." Lan Yunyu hesitated, and could not help but ask, "May I ask how Senior Liao and Mr. Lin are?" Liao Wenyuan heard Lan Yunyu say this and smiled. "Mr. Lin? Haha, Miss Lan, when you say it like that, how could I not respond? It's Lin Ming, right?" Lan Yunyu awkwardly nodded. She was now a commoner, and this Liao Wenyuan in front of her was probably a master at the pulse condensation period, and a titled aristocrat. She should refer to him in a respectable manner and call him Mr. But Lin Ming's status was that of a core disciple of the 7 profound martial house, so his status was actually higher than Liao Wenyuan's. Lin Ming also didn't have relations with her anymore, that's why in front of Liao Wenyuan she had called him Mr. Lin as a show of respect. Only someone who was incomparably intimate with Lin Ming, such as his younger sister or girlfriend, could call him Big Brother, or call him directly by his name. "I was sent by His Highness the Crown Prince. But before this, Brother Lin has also asked me about you. Miss Lan, your status is quite sensitive now, it is probably impossible for you to ever live a quiet life again. How about this, you come with me back to the Crown Prince's palace, and the Crown Prince will guarantee your safety, so that something like this will never happen again." Lan Yunyu nipped her lips and nodded. In this situation, she had no choice. So like this, Lan Yunyu arrived at the Crown Prince's palace in awe and trepidation. Unexpectedly, she was personally received by the Crown Prince, Yang Lin, who politely inquired about her situation. Lan Yunyu was then arranged into an elegant room within the Crown Prince's palace, and some maids were specially sent to take care of Lan Yunyu. Here, there was a pavilion with a collection of rare books, rooms to practice calligraphy and painting, and masters that would teach her how. There were martial arts cultivation rooms, and also martial arts teachers. When Lan Yunyu arrived here, her mood was extremely complex. She did not expect that so many things would happen within a few months, and that in the end she would finally be admitted to the Crown Prince's palace. In the Inscription Association, the guest inscription master would tailor their inscriptions based upon the customer's request. Each customer had different requests. Some only wanted to an inscription symbol, some wanted their treasures repaired, or some wanted to improve their treasures. Every day, Lin Ming was exposed to a variety of strange materials, and he would face a number of different requests. In the drawing process, Lin Ming's understanding of the nature of various materials began to slowly become perfect. He also began to further comprehend and achieve mastery of the memories and theories in his mind. Meanwhile, the soul force also experienced significant growth. His use of the overbearing soul tactic became more skillful, even almost as well as his use of the true primal chaos formula. He would frequently push himself to the limit of his ability, then enter into the ethereal martial intent and rely on the true essence stones he had to restore his true essence. This caused Lin Ming's true primal chaos formula to steadily progress. Like this, it would only be a matter of time before he achieved the small success of the second layer. He had continuously been drawing inscription symbols for 3 days, and Lin Ming began to become famous. More and more martial artists of Sky Fortune City came to know of the new guest inscription master at the Inscription Association. They knew that he was young, but his inscription technique approached the pinnacle of Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription masters. The flame brand that Lin Ming placed in his inscription symbols also became a hot commodity. If a treasure had this flame mark on it, its value would increase tremendously. To a martial artist, a treasure that came from a famous expert was similar to a priceless mink coat to an aristocratic woman. It really was just as addictive and hard to let go. In the 7 Profound Martial House, Murongzi saw Bai Jingyun's treasure sword, and with eyes shining, said, "Wow, Big Bista Jingyun, a medium-grade human step treasure sword." In the Sky Fortune Kingdom, a medium-grade human step treasure was very rare. There were many pulse condensation period martial artists who did not have a medium-grade human step treasure. But Murongzi and Bai Jingyun were only marital artists at the altering muscle stage. To an altering muscle stage martial artist, a low-grade human step treasure was already sufficient. A medium grade was simply overly extravagant. Millimeter, it's made by Hualuo Nation's master Jade Lotus. They've been open for less than a year, and my uncle gifted this to me. Murongzi said, "So that's it must be great to have such a nice uncle. That sword probably cost 20,000 gold taels." "Probably. But this money to you Murongzi is just some drizzle on a rainy day. Haha, younger sister. If you want to order a medium-grade human step treasure sword, it's not so easy. Come on. Our family would never be so lavish. Besides, my father is the worst cheapskate of all time. Only if I enter the top 10 of the ranking stone would get by something like that for me. To enter the first 10, it's hopeless to think it will happen in the next year." Bai Jingyun smiled, and said, "You're lazy. As long as you work hard, with your talent, it's very easy." "Oh, I hope so. But big sister Jingyun, how come I've never seen you take out this sword before?" Bai Jingyun said with a smile, "Because I couldn't find a suitable inscription before, so I never took it out. But this time, I heard that there is a guest inscription master at the Inscription Association. He is young, but his inscription technique level has already reached the pinnacle. This person also can create an inscription symbol that suits my attribute. So I want to bring this sword and go to the Inscription Association to have a look." Bai Jingyun said as she inventoried some materials. These materials had been arranged long ago, but she had never found a time to use them. Usually a person would be very particular about a medium-grade human step treasure's inscription symbol. A lower-level inscription master was simply insufficient to draw an inscription symbol upon a medium-grade human step treasure, and even those inscription masters whose skill was high enough, often because of some reason or another, they could not meet the owner's demand for what inscription symbol to put on the treasure. For instance, Bai Jingyun wanted an inscription symbol on her sword that had a water attribute or ice attribute. However, in the Sky Fortune Kingdom School of Inscription Technique, there just weren't many inscription symbols with attributes, and the only water attribute inscription symbols were the water parting symbol and a few others. But Bai Jingyun did not like these inscription symbols, and therefore had put this matter on hold. Murongzi curiously asked, "A young inscription master whose technique has reached the pinnacle? How young is he?" "It is said that he is younger than 20 years old. But I'm not too clear of just how young." "What a joke. That's simply too fabulous a tale. These rumors that people make up are become more and more odd. I don't believe that there can be a 20-year-old inscription master with such a high level of technique. I think that this guest inscription master is an old man who just looks a bit young. Either that or he's not so high level as people have blown him up to be." Bai Jingyun smiled and said, "RZ, you are just too dismissive of geniuses. When Lin Ming had emerged, you had also looked down on him. What kind of person is he now? Lin Minute will become a core disciple soon. Your temper just isn't good, your jealousy is too strong. You just can't see those at your age that are better than you. Hey, just who is jealous? Ah, this young lady has already begun to try her hardest. Big sister Jingyun, you just wait and see. Even if I cannot compare to that farm animal Lin Ming in the future, I will compete in the 10,000 killing array match 3 months from now, and I will not lose to him. If he can really enter the top 10, then I will also enter the top 10 and show you just how cool I am." Haha, who was it that just said a moment ago that they would not be able to advance to the top 10 within a year? Bai Jingyun asked with a teasing smile. That's because, Murongzi blushed, and had nothing more to say. Bai Jingyun laughed. Okay, I won't make fun of you. Do you want to go with me to the Inscription Association? I'm too lazy to go. This thing is just a rumor, even if I go there's no point. You might as well ask Yuhan's grandfather to draw an inscription symbol for you. Yuhan's grandfather is the best inscription master in Sky Fortune City. If he is willing to help you, then what's not to like? Bai Jingyun said, I want a water attribute inscription symbol. President Wang does not excel at them. There were specializations within the inscription industry. Although Wang Xuanji had many attainments in inscription techniques and was very proficient, concerning the 5 elemental inscription symbols, he only excelled at fire and metal attribute inscription symbols. Then I'll go first. You practice well, I will wait to see you in the top 10 3 months from now. Bai Jingyun teased. Alright, I'll go with you. I was just joking around, why are you so serious? Murongzi grumpily said. She sent a bullied look towards Bai Jingyun. I will show you how kind I am at heart and go with you to the Inscription Association. I want to see just how good this guest inscription master is. Millimeter? Okay. Chapter 131 Tale of Star Obsidian. Chapter 131 Tale of Star Obsidian. Chapter 130 One Tale of Star Obsidian. Inscription Association. When Murongzi saw Wang Yuhan in the distance speaking to guests in the Inscription Master Hall, she immediately ran up with joy. Yuhan. Long time no see. Did you miss me? Murongzi called out from afar. Hey, you. It's really been a long time since we saw each other. Wang Yuhan, Murongzi, and Bai Jingyun were 3 girls of similar age, status, and outstanding natural talent. In Sky Fortune City, besides Qin Xingxuan, the most talked about girls were these 3 proud ladies. These 3 girls had known each other since childhood and were close friends. However, Bai Jingyun and Murongzi later left to attend the 7 Profound Martial House. Since Wang Yuhan favored inscription technique and was not interested in fighting, she gave up on her opportunity to enter the 7 Profound Martial House. Bai Jingyun asked, Yuhan, how come you aren't studying with your grandfather today? Why are you in the hall greeting guests? Oh, that's right. Isn't there a very fierce guest inscription master who's come recently? Is he here today? Wang Yuhan slightly hesitated and immediately understood that there were many people who didn't know that the guest inscription master was Lin Ming. Murongzi and Bai Jingyun were disciples of the 7 Profound Martial House. How else would they not know that it was Lin Ming? A sardonic smile crossed her face as she said, He's in. I'm his assistant, so it's my duty to greet guests in the hall. Wow, an inscription prodigy that managed to have young Lady Wang as his personal assistant. He must be extraordinary. I must certainly experience this person. Murongzi said with a flair of exaggeration. Wang Yuhan, still smiling, said, being his assistant, I can learn many things. Would you like to see him now? Haha, yes, I must see. At this moment, Bai Jingyun commented, I came to little sister's place today because there is a matter I'd like to ask of the new guest inscription master. As she said this, she took out the medium-grade human step treasure long sword. I came this time to ask for a water attribute inscription symbol. I'd like to ask if the gentleman inscription master has time. Wang Yuhan covered her mouth and chuckled. Yes, he has the time. He's just restored his condition. Here, I'll lead you there. Lin Ming looked into the hall from the inscription room and saw Wang Yuhan bringing in 2 women. As they opened the door, Lin Ming had just withdrawn from his ethereal martial intent state. His true essence and soul force had not yet restored to their optimum condition, and he heard some people come in. Lin Ming sat in meditation and said, "Please write down your request on paper, lay down the materials and treasure, and you may leave. After the inscription is finished, someone will call you. During this period, please do not come in." Lin Ming spoke these words, but hadn't actually gotten a response. He slightly frowned and slowly opened his eyes. He looked back at Murongzi and Bai Jingyun staring at him with wide, round eyes. Also, Wang Yuhan was standing to their side, her smiling face filled with a happy expression. "Millimeter? It's you." Lin Ming naturally recognized these girls. They were the 7 profound proud pair of the 7 profound martial house. It's you? You are the guest inscription master?" Murongzi did not know if this was simply a Lin Ming lookalike. Her pair of beautiful eyes stared at him like 2 large quail eggs. She looked at Lin Ming's face with an unblinking expression, as if he was an illusion that would disappear at any time. "Yes, I am." Now that Lin Ming had sufficient status and influence, he no longer needed to conceal his status as an inscription master. You, Murongzi stuttered. She had heard that the new guest inscription master was young, but she had never thought that this man would be Lin Ming. Heavens, this is just so damn depressing. Is this some joke? This kick-ass elder sister has already recognized your strength. When you comprehended a martial intent, this elder sister did not have any words to say. When you had that evil monstrous perception, I just took you as some hard-working farm animal. But damn, this is so depressing. Since when were you an inscription master? I'm going crazy. This is just too damn shocking. Even this elder sister can't stand this. This is a joke, right? Yes. Yuhan, did you plot with this fellow to tease elder sister so you can be happy? Good. I admit that your joke is a bit creative, but this can't be real, right? Murongzi saw Lin Ming's serious face and heard his words, but still simply could not accept this fact. Wang Yuhan shrugged and said, "I might tease you for fun, but do you think that Lin Ming would join me in teasing you?" Murongzi squinted her eyes. Yes, this Lin Ming fellow, besides cultivation, did not have the slightest interest in anything else, otherwise he would have already messed with countless young ladies. How could he join with Wang Yuhan to play a joke like this on her? Not to mention they didn't really know each other. When did you start to study inscription technique? When I was 12 years old. Lin Ming nonsensically said. When I was 12 I ran into my master, and I studied under him. Lin Ming said this lightly with some superficialness, but his tone made Murongzi extremely unhappy. It was just like a poor person asking a super wealthy man with 1 million gold taels where he got that much money, and the wealthy man finally said, "I casually earned it when I was young." With this kind of indifferent tone, Murongzi had an impulse to beat someone up. Certainly, once she considered whether or not she could beat up this farm animal, and thinking that she might not necessarily win, Murongzi was forced to give up on this idea. By now, Bai Jingyun had recovered from her initial shock. She unnaturally smiled and said, "It's you. I see, every time I thought I'd seen the full height of junior apprentice brother Lin, in the end, I find that I have underestimated junior apprentice brother Lin. This inscription technique, junior apprentice brother Lin only studied for 3 years to be at the level of a master." Lin Ming responded, "I don't dare to call myself a master, but I can draw out some simple inscription symbols. This is all because of the help of my master." Ha ha, Bai Jingyun let out a hollow laugh twice. Some simple inscription symbol? She had heard that when Lin Ming had drawn the Ice Frost Guard symbol and placed it on some armor, the armor had changed color. Could this still be called a simple inscription symbol? 3 years to reach the point of being a master-level inscription master. Bai Jingyun could only attribute it to Lin Ming's monstrous perception that could comprehend a martial skill like the body-tearing bone-shattering fist with a 70% loss rate. To become a master-level inscription master in 3 years, this also, she could reluctantly accept. However, for Lin Ming to be an inscription master, was his soul talent much more outstanding than this martial arts talent? "What business do you two have here today?" Lin Ming opened his mouth to ask. His time was very tight these days, he didn't have any to waste. "Oh, yes, I have a matter." Bai Jingyun responded, and then drew out her treasure-long sword to hand to Lin Ming. The treasure sword was more than 3 feet long, and the shining blade was dazzlingly bright like snow. Moreover, it was extremely soft and could easily circle around one's waist. At the center of the sword pommel, there were 2 characters written in symbols. It wrote, "Blue Water. Good sword." Lin Ming praised as he probed the blue water sword with his soul force. He discovered that the array structure was very subtle and exquisite. It was superior to most medium-grade human step treasures. Bai Jingyun said, "Junior apprentice Brother Lin, I would like you to inscribe a water attribute or ice attribute inscription symbol on this sword. The true essence increase should be at least 36%. Water or ice attribute, 36%. Anything else?" "No, no more." Bai Jingyun listened to Lin Ming's casual tone. He obviously thought this request was very easy. She thought for a moment and said, "If junior apprentice Brother Lin can do better, that would be for the best. If the materials are insufficient, I can add more." Lin Ming glanced at the materials on the table. Although these materials were precious, they were useless to him. He could only use them to trade for points, but no matter how many points he had, there were some materials that were impossible to buy because the Inscription Association did not have them. Remembering his early plan, Lin Ming came to a decision. He would use this time to utilize all that he had recently learned, and see if he could draw up an inscription symbol that even Hutian stage masters would covet. Then, after he had attracted the attention of all the Hutian masters in the nation, he could have them help him find these rare materials. If so, they might even be collected in a short time. Thinking this, Lin Ming said, "1 tael of star obsidian. If apprentice sister Jingyun can find 1 tael of star obsidian, then I will use my own materials and draw the highest level inscription symbol that I can. I can guarantee that apprentice sister Jingyun will be satisfied with the end result." 1 tael of star obsidian? Bai Jingyun hadn't spoken, but Murongzi already cried, You are way too black. 1 tael of star obsidian costs 15,000 gold taels, and not only that, but it's very difficult to find in the Sky Fortune Kingdom. If you really wanted to buy it, then 15,000 gold taels might not be enough. Star obsidian was not only used in inscription, but also in refining. It was an extremely precious and rare material. Lin Ming said, "My true essence has recently thickened and condensed even more, and the level of my inscriptions has risen. But, I can still only barely draw up this inscription, and there is a risk of failure. Moreover, the value of the materials will not be less than 6 or 7,000 gold taels. I can guarantee that as long as I succeed, it is absolutely worth it." Were it not for the fact that the Inscription Association did not have any star obsidian, I would not have proposed this request. This, Bai Jingyun clenched her teeth and said, "Okay. My uncle in the Hualuo nation has some influence. I think he can find it. I promise you." Bai Jingyun had a very high status within the Bai family. Although 15,000 gold taels was not a small amount, if it was just one time, she was able to bring this much out. "Well, then I will thank apprentice sister Jingyun," Lin Ming said. He took out a pen and immediately began to write down a detailed list of materials. "For these materials, spend the money and points from my account," Lin Ming said as he handed the list to Wang Yuhan. This time was Lin Ming's personal business. Normally, according to the regulations of the Inscription Association, the guests had to pay the guest inscription master and Inscription Association in a 60/40 ratio. The Inscription Association provided the materials, and the guest inscription master provided the service. However, with Lin Ming's current status, the Inscription Association wouldn't haggle over him, occasionally taking advantage of his reputation as a guest inscription master and using the Inscription Association's materials to take on a personal request. Wang Yuhan read the rows of materials, and she was slightly startled. The value of these materials was not low. Generally speaking, even tedious high-quality inscription symbols would only cost 1,000 gold taels in materials. But the cost of this inscription symbol that Lin Ming wanted to draw up was 7,000 gold taels, and there were also several materials that were fairly rare. After the materials were collected, Lin Ming did not immediately start drawing the inscription symbol. Instead, he took up a true essence stone and once again entered the ethereal martial intent state. He sat in meditation and adjusted his condition for half an hour, to restore his true essence and soul force back to their peak condition. Afterwards, Lin Ming began to formally draw the inscription symbol. What he was going to create today was the complete version of cold ice fragments. Chapter 131 Resurgence of Wind and Clouds. Chapter 131 Resurgence of Wind and Clouds. Chapter 131 Resurgence of Wind and Clouds. The difficulty of cold ice fragments was quite a bit higher than the Icefrost Guard symbol. Even though the level of Lin Ming's inscription technique had progressed by leaps and bounds, there wasn't a guarantee that he would be able to draw it up successfully. Crush 1 crystal ice quartz, mix it thoroughly with 1 cup of water and filter out the residue. Lin Ming began to tell Wang Yuhan how to process the necessary materials. After a few days of coordinating with each other, Lin Ming and Wang Yuhan had formed a unique, tacit understanding. As long as Lin Ming gave the directions, Wang Yuhan was able to quickly and perfectly handle the materials. As Wang Yuhan's 10 slender fingers danced like spirits in the wind, each material began to be quickly processed by her one at a time. Lin Ming looked on, took a material, and revolved his overbearing soul tactic as he began his inscription drawing. Inscription symbols began to appear in the air, one after another. Some were round and luminescent like the moon, and some were small like pearls. They shined with a fantasy light, and seemed to breathe as if they were conscious beings given life. Lin Ming's inscription symbol drawing success rate was very high. From the start, almost none of the runes or symbols failed. But later, as Lin Ming's soul force and true essence began to steadily decrease, there were occasionally glistening inscription symbols that fell apart, and turned onto grains of light like twinkling stars. These failed inscription symbol shards hovered in the air like scattered fireflies dancing in the night sky. In the light of such unreal beauty, Lin Ming's expression was one of incomparable focus. His eyes were like black gems as they stared with dedication at the gorgeous inscription symbols in the air. There was almost a feeling of instant addiction when looking at him. Wang Yuhan's hesitant heart jumped. She quietly gazed at Lin Ming's profile, staring as the rays of light shadowed the contours of his face. For a moment, both her cheeks flushed red. She always thought that Lin Ming's most appealing and interesting time was when he was concentrating on drawing an inscription, and it was only at this time that Wang Yuhan had no fear of being discovered by Lin Ming. She would secretly watch him from her own angle. This scene continued for a long time, and soon the sun began to drop below the horizon of the Dew Mountain. The light within the inscription room began to gradually dim. This only served to accentuate the inscription symbol's light and make them appear even more enchantingly brilliant. Lin Ming's inscription plan was quite complex. He had continuously drawn more than 150 symbols and lines. The overlapping runes were like layers of ice-blue light that wove together into a blissful picture, as if the curtain of night had fallen with shimmering stars glittering within. This was a scene that had never appeared within the Sky Fortune Kingdom school of inscription technique. Even the usually heartless and mindless Murongzi, when she saw this magnificent display of shining light, was unknowingly enchanted. This was simply too beautiful. After a quarter hour, Lin Ming had approached his limit. He clenched his teeth, and forced himself to draw up the last inscription symbol. As both of his hands gathered together, the innumerable blue lights instantly fused into one like a woven piece of blue dream. Lin Ming took Bai Jingyun's blue water sword and directed the ice-blue-colored flame symbol onto it. That inscription symbol fell onto the snow-white blade of the blue water sword. With a kai-kai sound, the blue-colored symbol mark on the blue water sword began to emit waves of sapphire flames that spread out from the center and covered the entire sword. Soon, there was the sound of cold air condensing, and a layer of frost settled on the blue water sword's blade. This sword seemed as if it was swallowing all the heat around it, and the temperature of the inscription room plummeted by several degrees. Murongzi helplessly looked on as the cold frost on the sword thickened, her beautiful eyes perfectly round. "This is, Bai Jingyun swallowed a mouthful of saliva, her eyes shining as she looked at the blue water sword. She hesitated for a moment, not thinking of picking up the sword. After Lin Ming rested for a moment, he concentrated a small amount of true essence and poured it into the inscription symbol. He casually swung the sword, and a crescent beam of blue light, visible to the naked light, was sent forth from the sword's blade. It was like a thin piece of tissue paper as it entered into a stone platform in the inscription room and vanished from sight. At that moment, the stone platform was cut apart by that blue light, the two halves neatly sliced apart. As the stone platform was falling, at that moment, a layer of ice suddenly froze the stone platform, and thus the stone platform maintained its original appearance. Skill of inscription. Yang Yuhan cried out in alarm as she saw this blue light. A skill of inscription was when an inscription master would use inscription symbols and place a miniature array formation that would change the treasure's flow of true essence, finally turning that true essence into a skill. This skill was similar to a martial skill that could wound an enemy. It was the equivalent of giving a martial artist another martial skill. In the school of Sky Fortune Kingdom's inscription technique, the skill of inscription had basically been lost. Even many nearby countries did not have any inscription masters that were capable of this technique. Only some inscription grandmasters of Hualuo Nation had even the faintest possibility of understanding this technique. Thinking this, Wang Yuhan was short of breath. To Wang Yuhan, who was obsessed with inscription techniques, this was something that she had only ever read of in the ancient records. To be able to see this in front of her caused her to feel incomparably excited. When Lin Ming had drawn up his first inscription symbol, the overwhelming rune, had also come with a skill of inscription, instant violent strike. When a martial artist concentrated their true essence into the inscription symbol, the array formation within would absorb the true essence and compress it to the limit. In that instant, it would erupt and create an extremely lethal close-range attack. At that time, Tai Feng had relied upon this inscription at the field to defeat his opponent, Li Qi, and become the unexpected winner of the tournament. Because of this, Lin Ming's inscription symbol was brought to Mui's attention, and that was how Lin Ming eventually met Mui as a result. However, a skill of inscription like instant violent strike was quite preliminary and simple. It was only equal to an ordinary low-grade human step martial skill. Its value was not very high. When Lin Ming had drawn up the inscription symbol, the cost of the materials had only been 100 gold taels. The reason that the effect of instant violent strike was able to help Tai Feng turn defeat to victory was because Tai Feng had been enlisted in the military since his childhood and his family circumstances were very poor. He had never had a formal education on cultivation methods or martial skills, thus a low-grade human step martial skill was very precious to him, and allowed him to raise his battle prowess to another level. This was the reason that Mui had paid Lin Ming 3,000 gold taels to purchase his inscription symbol. This was already a very high price. To put it plainly, the skill of inscription instant violent strike was something that someone like Tai Feng, who had never had a formal martial arts training, could ever hope to afford. However, to wealthy individuals like Bai Jingyun and Murongzi, they had no need for such a weak martial skill. But this current cold ice fragment's supplementary skill of inscription was different. This skill of inscription was equal to a medium-grade human step martial skill, and it was also at the very top of that grade. What is the name of this skill of inscription called? Wang Yuhan asked somewhat excitedly. It's called Ice Cold Cut. Apprentice sister may feel it. As long as you pour your true essence into the inscription symbol, you can activate it. Lin Ming handed the blue water sword to Bai Jingyun as he said this. Bai Jingyun took a deep breath and carefully took the blue water sword into her hands. As soon as she touched the sword, Bai Jingyun immediately felt a cold chill spread up her arms, as if it were part of her flesh and blood. She then brought forth a small amount of true essence and injected it into the blue water sword. The entire process was lossless and incomparably smooth. The increased true essence effect is at least 40%. Bai Jingyun was startled. To her knowledge, only Wang Xuanji was at this level. Not only that, but this sword had a skill of inscription attached. Bai Jingyun concentrated her true essence into the inscription symbol as Lin Ming told her. She felt her true essence go through an amazing transformation as it turned into an icy air. As she continued pouring her true essence into the blade, the cold air around the blue water sword became increasingly terrifying. Little by little, the blue water sword began to excitedly ring, and the blade violently shivered. Bai Jingyun did not doubt that as long as she slashed her sword now, she could split apart the entire inscription room. This ice-cold cut is probably superior to the 2 medium-grade human step martial skills that I chose from the 7 profound martial houses depository. Although Bai Jingyun had yet to wield her sword, she knew what the result would be. After listening to Bai Jingyun's appraisal, even though Wang Yuhan was mentally prepared, she was also surprised. One must know that the martial skills and cultivation methods in the 7 profound martial houses depositories were already the best one could find within the Sky Fortune Kingdom. There were many martial artists in the Sky Fortune Kingdom that were unable to enter the 7 profound martial house. Or, even if that had entered the 7 profound martial house, if they hadn't entered the heavenly abode, they would not be able to choose a medium-grade human step martial skill. And even if they did enter the heavenly abode and were given an opportunity to choose a medium-grade human step martial skill, this choice was also limited by their ranking. Most of the time, they could only choose a martial skill that received little attention. Bai Jingyun was ranked 22, and the martial skills she could choose from were very good. Still, those choices were actually inferior to the ice-cold cut. How could Wang Yuhan not be startled by this? As one could imagine, if news of this kind of inscription symbol spread throughout the circles of Sky Fortune Kingdom's martial artists, it would inevitably cause uproar. Maybe even most pulse condensation period martial artists or even Hutian experts would come and pay a visit to ask for this inscription symbol. Wang Yuhan lightly estimated that this inscription symbol could sell for at least 20,000 gold taels. Even if it costed 30,000 gold taels, there would be a high demand. However, no matter how high, it couldn't be much higher. After all, only a medium-grade human step treasure would be worthy of such an inscription symbol. The treasure added together with the cost of materials would easily cost more than 50,000 gold taels. This was a price that the majority of pulse condensation period martial artists could not afford. So, after deducting costs, an inscription symbol could earn Lin Ming 20,000 gold taels. Although the consumption of true essence and soul force was very high, with Lin Ming's frightening resilience, he could most likely draw 2 a day. 2 of these inscription symbols were 40,000 gold taels. As long as there were customers that could afford this, he could earn 1.2 million gold taels in a month. That was simply mass robbery. An estimation of the number of martial artists that could afford more than 20,000 gold taels was no fewer than 100. In light of this, Lin Ming could gain more than 2 million gold taels with just this one inscription symbol. If Wang Yuhan thought of this, then Lin Ming had too. With his practice till now, coupled with his cultivation of the peak 3rd stage of body transformation and the crazy amount of training he had done in inscription technique these days, Lin Ming had just barely been able to draw this inscription symbol. What Lin Ming lacked now was not gold, but materials. There were many materials that simply could not be bought with gold. Therefore, Lin Ming had planned to trade the inscription symbol for those rare and precious materials that he needed. He would ask those that wished for his services to have the materials he wanted ready. He did not believe that with the help of all of Sky Fortune Kingdom's martial artists, he would not be able to collect all the materials he needed for the body inscription symbol in a short period of time. The news of Lin Ming trading top-quality inscription symbols for rare and precious materials was like a bomb. It rapidly spread throughout all of Sky Fortune City. True essence amplification factor of 40%, coupled with a top-tier skill of inscription. In Sky Fortune City, this inscription symbol could possibly be called an incomparable treasure. Even Wang Xuanji did not have the means to draw this inscription symbol, because in the Sky Fortune Kingdom School of Inscription Technique, this skill of inscription had already been lost. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.